Chapter 1178. Come, raise your legs. Yes, that's it. Straighten your back and lower your knees as much as possible. Yes, one big, two big, left leg splits, swing your hands, yes, swing your clothes, squint your eyes. Continue, do the cross steps. I'm not asking you to draw the snake. You silly boy, do you know how to do the cross steps or not? Yes, one more time. Turn around. After turning around, the first thing you need to do is kneel down with your right knee pressed against your leg. Then, place your hand on your left knee. In the brewery, Zhang Feng was teaching them over and over again. Outside the door, the old housekeeper of Zhang Shan's mansion, Zhang Fu, found it strange. Such voices had spread throughout the market since early this morning. If they hadn't heard the rumor that Zhang Feng went down the mountain in a fit of pique after fighting with the 4 great Confucian scholars last night, they wouldn't have heard it. Zhang Shan had come personally, but in the end, he couldn't wait any longer and left. Only Zhang Fu was left at the door to wait for Zhang Feng and ask Zhang Feng about the specific situation. But it wasn't until evening that Zhang Feng led Qing Chumo and the others out of the brewery, their bodies drenched in sweat. Zhang Feng's white robe didn't change at all, but Qing Chumo and the others felt uncomfortable. Since last night, Zhang Feng had made them wear short shirts made of top-grade silk, a mixture of white and black. There was also a row of what Zhang Feng called buttons on the chest. It looked awkward and anxious. When Li Qingxian and the others came out, their servants hurriedly helped them put on their robes. At the beginning, Li Qingxian and the others were indeed a little repulsed and even felt a little ashamed. After all, things like short sleeves were the attire of lower-class people. Now that they were wearing them and were going to participate in the mid-autumn poetry meet, they couldn't help but feel a little unnatural. But under Zhang Feng's insistence, they gritted their teeth and persevered. After all, this thing was also made of top-grade silk. There were still some differences between it and the coarse linen clothes passed down by the common people. They no longer had a way out. Once Zhang Feng lost his position at the mid-autumn poetry meet, they all knew what the outcome would be. To be honest, this dance was indeed nondescript, but once the dance was accepted, then it was really. Of course, all of this started with Zhang Feng. If it weren't for Zhang Feng instilling his values and thoughts on visual enjoyment in everyone from the very beginning, they wouldn't have dared to agree. After all, Zhang Feng treated this matter very seriously. Not only that, at the Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet tomorrow night, Zhang Feng would personally attend. This made them feel more at ease. Otherwise, they would always think that this was a plan devised by Zhang Feng to embarrass them. The tavern was a good place. Although the place was somewhat unsightly, the food here was still different from the food on the mountain. After all, to be able to eat the food personally cooked by Feng Zi was also a kind of joy in life. At this time, Zhang Feng and the others also noticed Zhang Fu. Zhang Feng wiped the sweat off his face and let them move freely before welcoming Zhang Fu into the tavern. Once they sat down, Zhang Fu said with a smile, "Prince Zhang, what are you doing in the winery?" Zhang Feng laughed and didn't explain anything. Instead, he asked, "Housekeeper Zhang, you seem to have been waiting for a long time. Did something big happen?" Zhang Fu nodded. Indeed. Early this morning, Master heard that young Master quarreled with the 4 great scholars on the mountain last night. Is this true? Zhang Feng thought for a moment and concluded that this was definitely something Yu Shinan and the others had done. He nodded his head. Yes, last night, there was indeed a quarrel. Hearing this, Zhang Fu's expression couldn't help but change. Prince Zhang, is it because of the iron mine? Zhang Feng wasn't in the mood to talk about this with the old housekeeper. He asked, "Housekeeper Zhang, if you have something to say, just say it." Only then did Zhang Fu let out an awkward laugh, realizing his identity. Master sent many people out because of this matter. But after Master heard about it today, he personally came to find you. But when I saw that the door was closed and there was a strange sound coming from the brewery, I knew that young Master Zhang was preparing for tomorrow's Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet. So, old Master wants this old man to ask how young Master Zhang's preparations are going? If not, Master has already gone personally. Zhang Feng hurriedly cupped his hands and said, I have already made plans for this matter. If Master Zhang wants to, don't come in contact with him for the time being. Otherwise, he will be targeted by thieves. Zhang Fu could only sigh at these words. Fine. Since that's the case, this old man has a letter that Master personally gave me. It's for Duke Chen. Back then, Master met with Duke Chen several times, so he promised Master that he would help him with something. Since that's the case, this old man won't stay any longer. But that Duke Chen seems to be a guest at the 16th King's residence. If young Master has time, go back and take a look. Perhaps you might be able to help. Duke Chen? Ho Junji. What was this old brat doing in Chang'an at this time? Chapter 1179. Zhang Feng thought about it for a moment and finally felt relieved. The other party was a duke. Although Zhang Feng knew that this guy came to instigate the crown prince to seize power but failed in the end, and that he was a bad guy to the bone, but this guy was very scheming. Now that he came to Chang'an, his purpose was obvious. It was to participate in the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet. As the name implied, the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet was a gathering of friends through poetry, but it was also a time for all the nobles of the royal palace to recruit retainers. It wasn't strange for him to come at this time. However, Zhang Feng just couldn't figure out why this old man had come at this time. Was it for the crown prince? Or was it for him? But when he thought about how this fellow was so close to his own home, Zhang Feng felt rather uncomfortable. After sending off the old steward, Zhang Feng had a heavy heart and wanted to return to his residence to take a look. After all, Jingshu was the only woman in his residence. Moreover, those guards were in the residence, and they should already know about what had happened to him. Moreover, this was such a major matter, and his own name was also affected. If that Duke of Qin, Ho Junji. Zhang Feng could no longer sit still. He waved his hand and said, let's go home. Li Qingxian and the others had been gnawing on a pot of braised lamb leg. When they heard Zhang Feng's words, they were truly rather taken aback. Qing Chimo still hadn't put down the lamb leg in his mouth, so he asked, go back for what? Zhang Feng's expression was rather grave and irritated. I'll go back and practice with Jingshu's musical instrument until tomorrow morning. Prince Zhang. Just as Zhang Feng was speaking, a shout came from the entrance. A shout came from the door. Zhang Feng turned his head and saw that one of the guards had already walked into the small tavern. Matriarch has ordered for you to quickly return home. Matriarch. Naturally, it was Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu. Did something happen at home? Zhang Feng asked with a grimace. The thing he was most worried about seemed to have happened. Li Qingxian and the others abruptly stopped eating and glared at the guard. The guard hurriedly waved his hands and said, no, it's outside the Ox courtyard, the Ox clan members are outside. I heard that the young master of the Niu family woke up today and was carried to the manor. He said that he wanted to thank you personally and also said that the family head had left the mountain. I only found out about the family head leaving the mountain after waiting. Hearing this, Zhang Feng finally understood. It had been a few days since Niu Jianhu's leg had been reconnected. At this time, Zhang Feng wanted to see how his leg had recovered. Let's go home and take a look. When Qing Chimo and the others heard this, it was as if they had gone to Zhang Feng's residence. How could they be in the mood to eat? They really wanted to be the first to witness such miraculous medical skills. They hurriedly packed up and called for a carriage. Then, they hurriedly returned to Zhang Feng's courtyard. At this moment, Zhang Feng's courtyard felt more like a home. However, Zhang Feng also felt that this courtyard was different from other courtyards in Zhang Feng's courtyard. This place was different in that it was too big, much bigger than other courtyards. Moreover, Zhang Feng also discovered that the location of this courtyard seemed to be at the center of the residence of the 16 Wangs. Not just the other places, even the gate was much larger than the gates of other courtyards. At this time, there were more than a dozen guards guarding it. It looked more like a general's courtyard. The residence of the 16 Wangs was not far from the Eastern market. At this time, Zhang Feng and the others were in a hurry to return. Therefore, almost as soon as the carriage stopped, Zhang Feng carried the medicine box and hurriedly entered the courtyard. Master, that Niu Jianhu brought a guest and has been waiting for a long time at the pavilion in the middle of the courtyard. At this time, when an old man saw Zhang Feng appear, he hurriedly went forward. Although the old man looked to be about 60 years old, his face was full of shrewdness, which made him look quite sage-like. Seeing this, Zhang Feng asked, "You are?" The old man hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Master, this humble one's surname is Du, and my courtesy name is Zidong. I am from Liang province. Because of the disaster, my family's business declined. In the end, Master Zhang found me and appointed me as your steward." Hearing this, Zhang Feng finally understood. However, he still felt a little confused. "You said you have a stomachache?" "That's me." Zhang Feng was speechless. "Damn it, I met Jia Daoran some time ago, and now I have a stomachache." "Damn it," however, this was not the time to ask about this. Zhang Feng asked, "Where is the pavilion in the middle of the lake? Lead the way." After all, he had not been to this courtyard many times. He only had a rough idea of the location, structure, and so on. Du Zidong was also stunned, but said nothing and led the way. After about a meal's worth of time, they finally arrived at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Seeing this pace, Zhang Feng suddenly had the illusion that he was looking at the sea. This lake, Zhang Feng dared to bet with 100% certainty that it could hold at least 100 ships. This was called King Lake. It really was a lake. Chapter 1180. In the distance. Zhang Feng saw that there were already many people standing in the pavilion. Niu Jinda, who was wearing a purple robe, seemed to be in a good mood. He no longer looked as dispirited as he did when he learned that his son had broken his leg. He and Yuqi Gong were talking to an old man with white eyebrows and a white beard. In the middle of the pavilion, Niu Jianhu was surrounded by a group of maidservants. He was even more comfortable than the emperor. Some were massaging his shoulders, while others were massaging his legs. Jing Shu, on the other hand, was different. She stood at the side and exchanged greetings with others from time to time. Zhang Sun Wuji and the others were also there. However, the pavilion was not big. They just stood casually on the bridge of the pavilion and talked about something. None of them were missing. No, except Li Shimin, all of them were here. After seeing them, Qing Chumo and the others could not help but feel a little awkward. They shyly followed behind Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng did not think much of it and continued to walk with a majestic gait. Niu Jinda was the first to see them. He hurriedly said a few words to the old man with white eyebrows and a white beard. Then, he laughed and threw himself at them with open arms. "Ha ha ha, brother Zhang, you're finally here." Seeing this, Zhang Feng's eyelids twitched. He hurriedly dodged Niu Jinda's bear hug. If he hugged him, although his leg would not be broken, he did not want to go through the same thing as last time when Lao Yu choked his neck. After hurriedly dodging Niu Jinda, he said, "Looks like you've been doing well recently. Did you secretly eat Xiaohu's tonic?" "Ha ha ha, you're right. Lao Li gave us a colorful tiger. Most of it went into this old man's stomach." Yuqi Gong stepped forward and protected Zhang Feng behind him. Zhang Feng's eyes widened when he heard this. "A tiger? How many days has it been?" "It's gone." "Old Niu, you're not King kind. Don't you know how to get me such a good thing? Even if it's just a bit of tiger bone, it'll be good enough for me to brew some wine." Niu Jinda glared at Zhang Feng. Then, while Zhang Feng wasn't paying attention, he wrapped his arms around Zhang Feng's neck. In an instant, Zhang Feng's face turned pale. The words he wanted to say were all stuck in his throat. Resentment, unwillingness, grievance, instantly, they all focused on Zhang Feng's face. However, he was still no match for this old man. He could only watch as he was brought to the pavilion in the middle of the lake. On the other hand, Zhang Sun Wuji and the others looked at Zhang Feng and then at the old man, as if introducing Zhang Feng to the old man. The old man was also looking at Zhang Feng with some interest at this moment. He stroked his beard. Zhang Feng finally broke free from Niu Jinda's grip and came to the old man's side. After greeting Zhang Sun, Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling and the others, he looked at the old man and asked, "You are?" The old man was wearing a dark purple robe. Although he was a little ordinary, he had a strong aristocratic aura. It made people feel as if they were facing a ferocious tiger. This made Zhang Feng's heart tremble. The old man smiled and sized up Zhang Feng, then said slowly, "My surname is Ho." After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng still asked, "May I ask, your name is?" The old man's face instantly became a little unhappy, and his face gradually darkened. It was disrespectful to ask someone's name so bluntly. Niu Jinda, Wei Zheng and the others coughed and tried to stop Zhang Feng. The old man hadn't expected this brat to ask such a question. Logically speaking, he should have said that it was an honor to meet you at last, but why would he ask this question? Ho Junji couldn't help but unhappily say, "Ho Junji." Hearing this, Zhang Feng came to a realization. So it was him. He had felt that this old scoundrel wasn't simple to have this sort of aura. He had already felt that this old man wasn't simple, but now it seemed, this wasn't just not simple. He truly had met the person he didn't want to meet the most. But Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel that things weren't as simple as they seemed. This old scoundrel wasn't someone who would visit a temple for no reason. As long as he had his eyes on you, you would definitely wash him clean. Moreover, this scoundrel was relying on his status as the crown prince's father-in-law. Wang Chong didn't dare to guarantee that he would do anything to him. Ho Junji was a fierce general under Li Shimin and Zhang Xia, and he had contributed greatly in the Xuanwu Gate incident, allowing him to achieve his current accomplishments. This old scoundrel was also a wise man. Once the world was stable, he would immediately retire. This was undoubtedly a smart move. But that was only under the condition that no one knew about him. As for Zhang Feng, he hurriedly bowed and said, "So it was Duke Chen. Please forgive me for not coming out to meet you." Ho Junji playfully looked at Zhang Feng. He indifferently said, "It was nothing much. I just happened to be in Chang and to meet some old friends, and I heard some interesting stories about little brother, so I wanted to come and see little brother's miraculous medical skills." Although Ho Junji wanted to shout that he had heard so much about Wang Chong, he suppressed his urge. At this time, he also wanted to see Zhang Feng's abilities, so he couldn't be bothered to lower himself to this scoundrel's level. If Niu Jianhu's leg had really been connected by him, then he could let it go, but if not, Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end when he saw Ho Junji's expression. This old scoundrel was definitely up to no good. But he didn't dare to say anything. He could only apologize, open the medicine box, and sit down next to Niu Jianhu. "Little brother Hu, your complexion has been good recently." Chapter 1181. After all, Niu Jianhu was Niu Jinda's only son. He was also the last hope of the entire family and the entire village. At this moment, when Zhang Feng came forward, Niu Jinda waved his hand and chased away the servant girl serving him. He smiled and squatted beside Zhang Feng, looking at him. Don't underestimate this. In ancient times, Lao Tzu and his son were basically friends. As long as his son was alive, he wouldn't dare to let Lao Tzu squat. He would lie down or sit down, otherwise it would be seen as disrespectful. But at this moment, it was precisely because of this. One could also see Niu Jianhu's position in Niu Jinda's heart. Feng Zi, I'm fine. When my leg recovers, if you tell me to go east, I definitely won't go west. Niu Jianhu was also excited. At this moment, he pulled Zhang Feng's hand, causing Zhang Feng to feel pain. Zhang Feng sucked in a breath of cold air. He was seriously regretting it. Why didn't he break his hand this time? Wasn't this too strong? Lao Tzu was like this, and even more so for his son. Brother Xiaohu, let's not talk about these useless things. Let's take a look at your leg first, okay? Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted and pulled his hand back. However, Niu Jinda laughed and said, Feng Zi, there's no hurry. Xiao Hu has been holding back for a few days and insisted on thanking you personally. If not for the fact that you left the mountain today and the stitches had to be removed today according to your rules, I wouldn't have brought this brat out to embarrass myself. Tell me, that net wall is so simple. I've seen it with my own eyes. So many brats didn't make any mistakes. Why did it have to be him? This clearly doesn't matter. He deserves it. As he spoke, Niu Jinda pointed at Gao Kan and said, But Feng Zi, this student of yours is a good seedling. Why don't you let me train him? In less than a year, I'll give you a soldier seedling. When Zhang Feng heard this, he looked at Gao Kan, whose eyes were burning with passion. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, I'll train my own student. If I let you train him, who knows what method you'll use? Besides, do you have such an advanced training method like mine? Zhang Feng was familiar with the art of war at this time. It was simple and crude. If they didn't die, they could become gods. This was also a rule that had always existed in the army. All the soldiers were filled with hostility. Where did this come from? He had been tortured miserably. However, to Zhang Feng, who had participated in countless military training in the 21st century and had watched countless movies and novels about the special forces, this was simply bullshit. Hostility was contagious, and it spread from one person to another. This was also the reason why these people were so brave. Who didn't have a stomach full of anger when they were trying to kill someone in the training ground? On the battlefield, this vicious aura was the driving force that kept them alive. It was also the thing that supported them to kill the enemy bravely. Moreover, this thing was passed down from generation to generation. There were even some people whose minds were distorted because of this. That was why there were so many rebellions in history. Zhang Feng was not willing to bear such infamy. If his students were to be like this in the future, then he would just kill them with a single slash. He didn't want to be implicated in the future. With this thought, Zhang Feng chuckled and interrupted, Hee, old bull, it seems like you have too much energy. Why don't you come with us to remove your son's stitches? When it comes to military matters, the two of us are both idiots. We still have to listen to Duke Chen. At the same time, he also flattered Duke Chen, Ho Junji. It wasn't that he wanted to flatter him. It was that he had no choice but to divert the trouble. He had just offended Ho Junji, and if he didn't quickly shut him up, he would be in for a lot of trouble. If he was targeted, he would be dead meat. This singer was the type of person who would definitely die if she missed someone. However, this also aroused Zhang Feng's interest. When no one was paying attention, Zhang Feng hurriedly asked, Old bull, let me ask you something. How did you get to know Duke Chen? At this time, Zhang Feng was staring at Qing Yao Jin, Fang Xianling, and the others, who were happily chatting with Duke Chen. He was full of question marks. Logically speaking, these were two completely unrelated people. How did they get to know each other? Niu Jinda didn't know why Zhang Feng would ask this. Thinking that he had discovered something, he hurriedly explained, Hey. I thought it was something big. Old brother, didn't we join the army before? Do you know who our immediate superior is? Zhang Feng was shocked. It can't be him, right? That's right. Seeing that he had fooled around, Niu Jinda said, Back then, when Duke Chen learned of what happened on Mount Qilian, he and General Li Shaogong brought old Yu and the others up the mountain to risk their lives to rescue them. Yes, it was Qing Gugong and Li Shaogong. General Li was touched by us and became close friends. It was also because of this that we were allowed to leave the military. Although we left, we were still considered as non-staff members in the military. Our duty was to prepare supplies for the military. In the past few years, although we are living a comfortable life now, we have been thinking about returning to the military all the time. This is also why we were so excited when we learned that you understood military science and wanted to train Tai Nyo and the other boys. After all, you've seen this group of boys. They've never suffered as children and have been spoiled since they were young. They're not suited for the army. We were also worried that they would lose face for us. It's fine for us, but we were worried that we would lose face for General Li and Duke Chen. Chapter 1182. Zhang Feng really didn't know what was going on. Hearing old Niu's words, Yu Qigong and the others also sighed and chimed in. Zhang Feng couldn't help but be dumbfounded. As for Li Qingxian and the others who were standing in the distance, they stared dumbfoundedly at the magnificent scene of these old fellows taking turns to talk Zhang Feng until he almost cried. They almost couldn't hold back and wanted to say a few words. But in the end, they were still sent flying by Qing Yaojin with a kick. They were afraid that these young fellows would expose their good deed. That wouldn't be fun. Niu Jianhu was still anxiously waiting for Zhang Feng, who was holding his leg and holding the knife in his hand, to stab his leg. He was already prepared to faint from the pain. But after waiting for a full 2 hours, in this kind of nervous state, he suffered for 2 hours. But in these 2 hours, these old fellows seemed to be high from bragging. How could they still care about him? Niu Jianhu simply closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. F***CKU. If you want to stab me, then so be it. Can't you let me have a good time? What kind of time is it now? Are you still bragging? If you annoy Lao Tzu, do you believe that I won't expose your identities? But obviously, Niu Jinda and the others had already treated him as heir. As for Jing Shu, at this time, she couldn't listen anymore. Her man was fooled by a group of people. Other than sighing, what else could she do? These people's identities were better than the other. What could she, a little girl, say? So, she quietly found an excuse to leave. Out of sight, out of mind. Everyone was talking excitedly. Zhang Feng actually waved his hand and placed a few tables of delicious food on the waterside pavilion outside the pavilion. They continued to eat and drink. Another 2 hours passed, until Li Shimin came. Only then did everyone remember the proper business. Li Shimin was after all a meticulous person. He glanced at Niu Jianhu, who was sleeping soundly, and knew what was going on. Li Qingxian and the others could no longer hide and hurriedly went forward to pay their respects. Behind Li Shimin was a group of old men who looked up to the sky. This caused Zhang Feng to sniff. There was always a strong smell of medicine on this group of people. It was obvious that they had been infected with Chinese medicine for a long time, which was why there was such a smell. Zhang Feng hurriedly asked, Lao Li, these people are. Li Shimin looked behind him with a smile and said, these people are not simple. After the emperor heard about your legendary medical skills, he wanted to let the people of the Imperial Institute of Medicine come to see you and teach them a lesson. Look at this group of old things. They think they have some skills, so they are arrogant. This is not good. Zhang Feng suddenly understood. How could anyone who could enter the imperial hospital be a simple person? However, having stood at the peak for so many years, they were naturally unwilling to lower their heads to look at those ants and see if they had already surpassed them. Zhang Feng did not dare to offend them, so he hurriedly clasped his fist and bowed. Everyone, this one has not received you well. I was chatting with my old friends and forgot. This one will prepare a banquet in a little while to personally apologize. How about it? Ha ha ha, Prince Zhang, what are you saying? You all, have all taken good care of us, and with Duke Chen and Second Master Li here, we would not dare. Imperial physician Zhou had originally thought nothing of this matter. This morning, he had been summoned by little Gizi to accompany the emperor to his private estate. They had long known that the retired emperor had given the manor to a young brat. In addition, this young brat was the one who had saved the ox-seeing tiger's leg. Moreover, he was the one who had made the retired emperor lose face in the imperial court. How could he have a good expression? But when he saw Wei Zheng, Hou Junji, and the others, he was afraid. In front of these people that even he had to bow and scrape, this brat dared to put on an act? After exchanging some pleasantries, a series of discordant snoring sounds caused black lines to appear on everyone's forehead. Li Shimin pointed at Niu Jinhu and asked, what's going on here? How did they end up sleeping? This, Wei Zheng and the others were at a loss for words. They hurriedly turned to Zhang Feng. Fengzi, weren't you going to examine little tiger's wound? How did this? Zhang Feng wanted to curse. He glared at Niu Jinda and said, "Damn it, if you hadn't interrupted me, Niu Jinhu's stitches would have been removed." Niu Jinda opened his mouth, pointed at himself, and awkwardly smiled. "I forgot." "Amazing." Zhang Feng gave him a thumbs up. "You even forgot to examine the wound of your son, your only son. Just how much yellow soup have you poured into your brain? Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's take a look at little tiger's leg first." Zhang Feng couldn't say anything. After all, this was a serious matter. Li Shimin kicked away Yuqi Gong, Qing Yao Jin, and Niu Jinda. Then, he sat beside Zhang Feng with his hands clasped behind his back, carefully observing Zhang Feng applying alcohol bit by bit onto Niu Jinhu's leg that was wrapped in bamboo pieces. At this moment, the imperial physicians also widened their eyes, watching Zhang Feng's actions. The remaining people also stood on their tiptoes, sticking their heads out to watch Zhang Feng's every move. When the last piece of bamboo was removed, everyone saw Niu Jinhu's swollen leg, as well as a wound that stretched from his knee to his ankle. At this moment, the wound had already formed a scab, but the centipede-like stitches still made everyone's teeth ache. After Zhang Feng examined it, he glanced at the people from the imperial physician court and said, "Brother Little Tiger, wake up, I'm going to use the knife." Chapter 1183. Niu Jinhu was having a sweet dream at this time. He seemed to be dreaming of a girl. How could he know that Zhang Feng was doing something on his leg? If it weren't for Li Shimin's presence, Niu Jinda would have slapped this bastard unconscious in the morning. How could he still have the mood to sleep at this time? But now this guy was sleeping soundly. In addition, the emperor and others were gathered together, so he couldn't say anything. He could only stare anxiously at Niu Jinhu. And Zhang Feng was not careless. It seemed that no one had witnessed the whole process of him showing off, so he soaked the special scalpel in alcohol and carefully cut Niu Jinhu's leg with the scalpel. Ouch. F***CK, who is it? Who the F***CK is touching me? Niu Jinhu finally woke up in a sharp pain, but he didn't dare to move his right leg at this time. After all, there was still a scalpel in it. Under the instinctive reaction just now, the scalpel, which was just looking for thread in the wound, was inserted into the flesh again because of his movement. It was so painful that his legs trembled. Niu Jinhu was stunned. Weren't they just chatting? Why did they suddenly want to cut him? When he opened his eyes, he thought it was Zhang Feng and Qing Chumo who were playing tricks. But when he saw Li Shimin's face, the anger in Niu Jinhu's heart was instantly extinguished. Niu Jinhu couldn't help but be moved at this time. Did the emperor want to let Fengzi cut his leg and then watch the process of bone setting again? Otherwise, what were those F***King imperial doctors doing here? Niu Jinhu was terrified. He didn't dare to experience this pain again. If this were to happen again, it would be a huge joke. At this time, Li Shimin, Imperial Dr. Zhou, and the others automatically filtered out Niu Jinhu's scream. After all, in their eyes, this was a normal thing. His leg was broken. At this time, what else did he want? Even Niu Jinda was staring at Niu Jinhu's leg at this time. He wanted to see if Zhang Feng was going to pull out the bone. He was also very curious whether the bone was really set. But this time, Zhang Feng was a little scared. He stared at Niu Jinhu and said, "Why are you shouting? This is great, the wound that was not easy to heal is now opened again. Why don't you lie down? Come, give him a bowl of anesthetic soup and a bowl of sleeping powder. It's best to let him sleep. Why so troublesome?" Imperial Dr. Zhou also became interested at this time. Seeing that Zhang Feng was going to give him anesthetic soup, he took out a delicate acupuncture cloth bag from his arms. Without waiting for Niu Jinhu to beg for mercy, he instantly pierced it into Niu Jinhu's temple. The next moment, Niu Jinhu fell asleep. After exclaiming the magic of acupuncture, Zhang Feng hurriedly and carefully cut open Niu Jinhu's skin with a small pair of scissors soaked in alcohol. After dealing with the broken hair used to suture the wound, he pulled out the thread used to suture the wound bit by bit. Li Shimin was excited. "Fengzi, after doing this, Xiaohu's leg is healed? Zhang Feng nodded. After thinking for a while, he turned over the wound that had just been poked with a small pair of scissors and said, judging from the wound, Xiaohu's leg is well healed. That is to say, Xiaohu's leg can walk in half a month. If possible, he will be able to jump around before the end of this year. He didn't know what kind of tonic old Niu gave Niu Xiaohu, or the ancient people's resistance was so good. In such a short time, Niu Xiaohu's leg injury had already healed by more than half. Li Shimin heard this and looked at Imperial Dr. Zhou again. Imperial Dr. Zhou heard this and wanted to open Li Shimin and pick up the knife to see whether Niu Jianhu's bones had healed or not. That is to say, whether the broken leg had healed or not. But he didn't dare. At this time, seeing Li Shimin glance at him, his heart trembled and he hurriedly said, Second Master, looking at the condition of the leg injury, Brother Xiaohu's leg should be fine. It's really worth celebrating. Yes, yes, yes. Second Master, Master Niu, don't worry. I will personally check Xiaohu's pulse and give him acupuncture later. Then, I will prescribe a better tonic. In less than 3 months, Brother Niu should be able to walk. Li Shimin, Niu Jinda, and the others didn't believe this group of imperial doctors. In the end, they looked at Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng washed his hands and handed the tools and medicine box to the servant, then said, You should know how to use this bamboo clip. Now, I have wrapped the gauze on Xiaohu's leg injury. I will have to trouble the imperial doctors to help me wrap it up. Wait for this Zhang to prepare food and wine. I hope everyone. Hey, Fengzi, what are you talking to this group of old bastards for? Let's go in and talk. Li Shimin hurriedly stopped Zhang Feng. He grabbed Zhang Feng's neck and dragged him out. Imperial Dr. Zhou and the others curled their lips. But the emperor had already said, what can they do? Now that the brat was gone, they could check on Niu Jinda's noble son to see if his leg bone had been reconnected or not. Zhang Feng didn't care about what this group of imperial doctors could find out. The key was that he was afraid that this group of people would apply that kind of medicine on Niu Xiaohu's leg. Then he would die. What kind of medicine is that? That was actually slaked lime. That's sour feeling. Chapter 1184. The moment they entered, Li Shimin and the others held their breaths and sat down. The banquet had officially begun. However, under the repeated insistence and encouragement of the crowd, Jing Shu was called up and prepared to play a song. However, she was strongly dissuaded by Zhang Feng. What a joke. This is my, Zhang Feng's, woman. You want to listen? Not a chance. This shout put Li Shimin on the spot. Fengzi, you're simply forgetting your friends for your lover. That's right. You're unreasonable. We're all brothers, but you're not even willing to share? Scram. Brothers are brothers, but you can't mess around with your wife. Zhang Feng anxiously retorted. But when he said that, everyone couldn't help but laugh playfully. Yu Qigong heartily laughed. Fengzi, I told you that you couldn't bear to part with your wife. Since you've said this, why don't you find some time to marry Jingshu and little sister Yuyao? That'll be perfectly justifiable. Although this was the case, Zhang Feng truly hadn't thought through the question of marrying right now. After all, while marrying was good, he was still unwilling. Marrying at this crucial moment was a little too hasty. After all, the 5 surnames and 7 hopes had already made their move, and these people were far more terrifying than the Turks. If these people were serious, the consequences would truly be troublesome. Moreover, Zhang Feng was well aware of the intentions of his old brothers today. But, everyone, let's talk about something else. Li Shimin beamed at Zhang Feng and said to Ho Junji, Elder Ho, this kid has made quite a few achievements on the mountain. You should have heard of them. Ho Junji nodded. I've heard of it, but it's just hearsay. However, today, Prince Zhang's medical skills are indeed unimaginable. However, Old Man also heard that the basketball, football, braised meat, white paper, and radio gymnastics that were popular in Chang and City were all created by Prince Zhang. Even though Ho Junji had been in Luozhou this entire time, he still knew about these things. However, these were just rumors. He didn't know if it was Zhang Feng who did it. But if it wasn't Zhang Feng who did it, then who did it? That was why he came to Zhang Feng's residence today. On the one hand, it was because this guy had some tricks up his sleeves. Most importantly, he wanted to see what kind of person Zhang Feng was. Not only was the academy unconventional, but he was also able to come up with something like this. Zhang Feng could naturally tell that Hou Junji was probing him. Seeing this, he cupped his fist and said, "These are all minor tricks that Duke of Qin doesn't need to worry about." He didn't dare to be careless. Li Shimin and the others also didn't know what Hou Junji was up to, but they all knew about these things, so they didn't care. Zhang Feng saw that the few of them did not say anything, so he could only wait patiently. As expected, after waiting for a little while, Hou Junji asked, "Kid, if these are all minor tricks, then there's no one in the entire Tang dynasty who can compare to you." Hou Junji looked at Zhang Feng with a playful look in his eyes. This brat's words were simply watertight. He didn't know why Zhang Feng was so wary of him, but this was probably one of the things that had attracted Hou Junji's attention. Seeing this, Li Qingxian hurriedly changed the topic. "It was all thanks to Duke of Chen's 10,000 dan of grain that we were forced to abandon the mountain. Otherwise, there really would have been a major disaster. It was precisely because of these 10,000 dan of grain that Cheng and was able to avoid the food crisis. Compared to what we did, it truly was a minor trick. For the suffering common people of Cheng and the several thousand students of my Shao Mountain, this student, Li Qingxian, would like to propose a toast to Duke of Qin." Right. This kid was too rude. If not for Duke of Chen's 10,000 dan of life-saving grain, how could this kid's academy have its current glory? Only then did Zhang Feng react. He raised his wine cup with a smile and said, "I am Zhang Feng." "Thank you, Duke Chen." Hou Junji sighed, but he still raised his cup and drank with Zhang Feng. Only then did he ask, "Old man, I heard that you are preparing to participate in the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet tomorrow?" "Yes, tomorrow." This kid truly is going to participate in the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet. Zhang Feng nodded. "Is Duke of Qin also going tomorrow?" Everyone knew what the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet was for. At this moment, Li Shimin and the others couldn't help but glance at Hou Junji. Although the smile on Hou Junji's face remained unchanged, he was inwardly getting a little angry. Was this brat trying to test him instead? This really was, he didn't know what he was doing. Zhang Feng's smile was very thick at this moment. He didn't like the existence of uncertain factors, and he also didn't like being led around by others. He wasn't used to this either. But at this moment, that damned Hou Junji did the exact opposite. Beaming at Li Qingxian, he asked, "Young Master Li, old man, I heard that you've been preparing something. Is it to be displayed at tomorrow's Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet?" This, Li Qingxian was rather troubled. On one side was his father-in-law. On the other side was his good brother. He instantly felt a little numb. Just a moment ago, the two of them had been exchanging blows. Why did they suddenly turn around and point their spears at him? Wasn't this too exciting? Chapter 1185. Duke Chen has already asked, so there's no harm in speaking. Li Shimin also didn't know what these brats had learned in this period of time. Every time he asked, all of them would stammer, and there were many times when they would hide and not let anyone see what they were up to. At this moment, Li Shimin suspiciously looked at Li Qingxian and asked, "Qian, you haven't been fooling around recently, right?" Replying to father, "We've been studying recently." Li Shimin frowned and asked, "What are you studying that you need to hide?" "Junior high second grade physics." Li Shimin, Hou Junji, Wei Zheng and the others, in truth, Li Shimin and the others all knew about this. After all, the things on the mountain were generally kept to the outside world, so if anyone wanted to ask about it, they would know exactly what had appeared on the mountain recently. These strange things had appeared many times, so Li Shimin and the others naturally didn't take them to heart. However, Li Shimin was very concerned about what skills these young men had learned. After all, his confidants and ministers were all gathered together at this time. It would be best if they could show off at this time. After all, this was the time to gain face. But now that he heard Li Qingxian's words, Li Shimon's expression darkened. Why did I hear that you hid with Tai Niu and the others in the brewery for an entire day, and you occasionally heard some strange sounds? Li Qingxian knew that Lao Tzu would ask this. Li Qingxian couldn't help but scowl as he said, replying to father, your child and the others are preparing for tomorrow's mid-autumn poetry meet. What things? We're preparing for the dance, PFFF. In truth, Li Qingxian didn't want to say it. It would have been fine if he didn't say it, but if he did, he would definitely be beaten tonight. But it was impossible for him to not say it. In a situation like this, if he said something, it wouldn't matter. He could just fool around. But, where am I right now? This was a gathering of big shots, and Imperial Father was about to show off. How could he dare to be perfunctory? At this time, Li Shimon was also very uncomfortable. He glared at Zhang Feng with an extremely ugly expression. Fengzi, I asked you to take care of my sons. Why didn't you? Why didn't you? They used to be stubborn children who did whatever they wanted in Cheng and city all day long. But today, you. Why did you also learn bad things from them? Li Shimon didn't care about Li Qingxian. At worst, he would just go into seclusion for a year and make up for everything. However, if a good person was led astray, it would be tantamount to destroying the whole person. At this time, Wei Zheng and the others were also a little moved, and they all scolded Qing Chumo and the others at the same time. Qing Chumo and the others were furious, he couldn't wait to skin Zhang Feng alive. I've long said that this thing isn't reliable, but it seems like it's true now. I'll definitely be beaten when I go back. Although no one said anything bad about Zhang Feng couldn't sit still anymore. He was flustered. Although these old brothers were talking about Qing Chumo and the others, what was this? This was about face. They were indirectly saying that he didn't educate these people well. It would be strange if he could sit still. Hey, what do you all mean? Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted everyone and said, you all only know how to talk about them? Do you know how hard they worked for this poetry competition? Why are you all blaming others? Li Shimon was speechless. Is dancing something a man can do? This, Ho Junji was also a little unhappy at this time, and his face was ashen. However, because Li Shimon was here, he tried his best to restrain himself. He didn't allow himself to act out. After all, the crown prince was going to be the emperor in the future. Although there was no harm in learning some music, it was Zhang Feng's fault to cause such a ruckus. Moreover, he was preparing to act coquettishly in front of the crowd at the Mid-Autumn Festival poetry competition tomorrow. Cough, Zhang Feng. Although learning some music can improve one's mood, isn't it a little inappropriate to act coquettishly in front of the crowd? Inappropriate? Inappropriate, your great uncle. You're just a sh*t stirrer, touching the pot that doesn't boil. Huh, you're right, Duke Chen. However, although the way of music can only be regarded as an unorthodox study, I wonder if you've heard of high mountain and flowing water? High mountains and flowing rivers. Li Shimon and Ho Junji couldn't help but ask in unison, I've heard of this. Who doesn't know the story of Boya Ziki? But if you put it here, isn't it a little inappropriate? Inappropriate? Zhang Feng chuckled. Might I ask Lord Duke Chen, what's inappropriate about this? Since Duke Chen has heard of the story of Boya Ziki and the high mountains and flowing rivers, I presume that Duke Chen has also heard of music. This thing has been passed down since the Warring States period. I presume that it isn't something that any unorthodox study can compare to, right? Then, why does Duke Chen think that this is an unorthodox study? Ho Junji almost vomited blood at Zhang Feng's question. What sort of grudge did the old man have with you that you have to press so hard? Ho Junji couldn't help but angrily say, do you know that old man has heard that there have been many voices in the imperial court accusing your White Deer College of neglecting its proper duties? His Majesty has invested a great deal of capital in the construction of the academy, and he has even placed great hopes on it. But look at what you've done, what's wrong with my academy? Zhang Feng pressed on. Li Shimin saw this and wanted to say something. But after some thought, he glanced at Zhang Sun Wuji. Zhang Sun Wuji originally didn't want to be the mediator, but now that the emperor had signaled him with his eyes, he would be insensible if he didn't say anything. Cough, cough, Feng Zi, Duke Chen is only expressing his own views on this matter. We came today to see just what you've prepared. Duke Chen also came to see what you've prepared. Duke Chen also came to help you check things out so that tomorrow, we can start the operation ahead of time. That's right, Feng Zi, why are you so explosive today? Feng Zi, this is your fault. You're not an impulsive person, so why are you so impulsive today? We're all doing this for your own good. Qing Yaojin, Wei Zheng, and the others hurriedly tried to persuade him. Only then did Zhang Feng's anger subside. But Zhang Feng wasn't angry. He was doing this on purpose. He wanted to see just how deep Ho Junji was. But now, it seemed that this Ho Junji, it was time to move a little further away. This old scoundrel was even more venomous than a viper. Seeing that he had a way out, Zhang Feng harumphed and said, since that's the case, then this little one has wrongly accused Duke Chen. I hope that Duke Chen can forgive me. The second reason we came back today was also for this dance. Since that's the case, we might as well do it all at once. Didn't all of you want to hear my wife, Jingshu, sing a song? Then you're in for a treat today. In a little while, Jingshu and I will perform a song for the army. What was this? Perform a song? You? You even know how to do this? Everyone couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Since when did Zhang Feng, this brat, dabble in this Dao? Chapter 1186. While they were talking, amidst the confusion of the crowd, Zhang Feng hurriedly drove Li Qingxian and the others out of the living room. Then, he mysteriously went off to do something with the others. Li Shimin and the others were stunned. At this time, those who should leave had all left, leaving behind a group of court tycoons. At this time, everyone couldn't help but look at Li Shimin. Although they wanted to go out and see what this group of brats was doing, at this time, the emperor didn't say anything, so they didn't dare to go out and see. Li Shimin also wanted to go and see. Let's wait for a while. You should all know that Fengzi cracked Jingshu's Huga 18 beats last time. I was careless. If this brat doesn't know anything about music, how could he have gotten Jingshu back then? Alas. Everyone sighed softly when they heard this. It was the first time that Zhang Feng came to Jingshu's room. At this time, Zhang Feng was sitting in the living room of Jingshu's room with a gloomy face, looking at Jingshu's room. Jingshu was also sitting beside Zhang Feng with her head lowered, blushing slightly. She kept silent. In fact, Jingshu's heart had been beating fast at this time. Steamed Bun had just told her that she was eavesdropping. She probably knew who was sitting in the living room best in the whole Bee Garden. But only she knew these things, and she didn't dare to say it out. At this time, Zhang Feng should have come for the music, let her play the music. Zhang Feng was not in a hurry at this time, and no one could see the anger he had when he just came in. Instead, he looked at Jingshu's room with great interest. The room was decorated very elegantly, and it looked like a noble woman. On the four walls, there were all kinds of ancient paintings and ancient characters. On the wall directly opposite Jingshu's living room, there was a woman who Zhang Feng did not recognize. She was holding an umbrella, wearing a fur coat, and carrying a zither on her back. The woman was a natural beauty, but Zhang Feng still didn't know who she was. On the bookshelf next to the picture scroll, there was a dense collection of music scores and other things. Although Zhang Feng did not understand these things, he knew that these things should be priceless. Most of these ancient scrolls are things from Swallow Descent Brothel when we moved last time. They were sent back by our sisters and the procuress. Some of the flowers were gifted by some people. Oh right, when you weren't around last time, the retired emperor and the empress personally came to visit. Most of these were brought by the two of them from the palace. They said that they wanted you to cultivate your sentiments when you have nothing to do, and learn more about palace etiquette. As she spoke, Jingshu glanced at Zhang Feng, and a strange look flashed across her eyes. When Zhang Feng heard this, he did not take it seriously. At this moment, when Jingshu said this, Zhang Feng's interest waned. What does the retired emperor look like? Tell me, and that Empress Zhangsun, I heard that she is a natural beauty. Isn't she devastatingly beautiful? Without waiting for Zhang Feng to finish speaking, Jingshu covered Zhang Feng's mouth with a pale face. Prince Zhang, don't talk about this anymore. This is talking nonsense about the retired emperor and coveting Empress Feng Yi. This is punishable by death. There was such a damn rule? Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. He hurriedly comforted her. Okay, let's not talk about it, let's not talk about it. As he spoke, Zhang Feng also took the opportunity to hug Jingshu's slim waist. The air couldn't help but become a little more beautiful. Zhang Feng's breathing also became a little rapid. After the first experience last time, Zhang Feng was looking forward to this kind of thing between a man and a woman. Moreover, at this time, Jingshu was already his woman. Although they had not done the deed of husband and wife, and had not gone through the wedding ceremony, the whole Chang and city now knew that they were in a relationship. They lived together, so who would believe that nothing had happened? Moreover, Jingshu was exactly the same as the campus belle Zhang Feng had a crush on in the University of the Future. How could he control himself at this time? His breathing slowly became rapid. Jingshu was the same. Although she also wanted to, when she thought of what kind of people were sitting in her living room, she couldn't help but be shocked. She forced herself to push Zhang Feng away. Prince Zhang, why are you calling me? Zhang, my husband. Don't, there are guests at home at this time. After hearing Jingshu's words, Zhang Feng was also enlightened. A basin of cold water was poured down on his head, suppressing the fire in his heart. With this pressure, the two of them instantly felt awkward. That's right, I came to look for you this time because I want you to play a song with me. Wait, it's in the living room, and, tomorrow at the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, the two of us should also play a song. Jingshu's cheeks were burning at this time. She whispered softly, Zhang, my husband, can you let go of me? Zhang Feng was stunned when he heard that. Only then did he realize that he was still holding Jingshu tightly. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He missed you, who was far away in Jiangnan. Alas. After a long sigh, Zhang Feng said, I'll write a song now. Later, we'll practice here. Then we'll go to the living room and play together with Li Gan and the others. How about that? Okay, it's all up to you, my husband. Chapter 1187. About 2 hours later. Li Qingxian and the others had already placed some musical instruments in the spacious courtyard outside the living room. There were gongs, drums, trumpets, and even 2 sets of chimes. This piqued the interest of Li Shimin and the others. And these musicians were also temporarily transferred over from Swallow Descent Tower. Zhang Feng and Jing Shu also brought musical instruments along with the maids in the manor. They were discussing something with the group of musicians in a low voice. They even handed pieces of white paper to the group of musicians. Li Shimin could no longer sit still. Seeing this, Xiao Gizi hurriedly walked to Zhang Feng's side and asked, Prince Zhang, what are you doing? This, just tell Lao Li and the others to wait. It'll be done soon. After the time it took to eat a meal, the group of musicians frowned deeply and finally nodded. At this time, Zhang Feng waved his hand and let Li Qingxian and the others, who had changed into their equipment, enter the stage. But at this time, everyone in the courtyard stared dumbfoundedly at the clothes Li Qingxian and the others were wearing, speechless. Li Qingxian and the others were blushing like the new daughter-in-law. They lowered their heads and covered their crotches with their hands as they walked up shyly. Every one of them was wearing tight-fitting clothes that were like cowhide. Although they looked well-behaved, there was a row of buttons in the middle of their shirts, and they were also wearing a strange hat. Although they looked a little strange, they were still worth looking at as a whole, showing off their figures. They appeared valiant and formidable, but there was also an indescribable awkwardness. These strange clothes were exactly the same as the statue Li Shimin saw at the entrance of the academy. It was just that there was no cloak. Li Shimin couldn't help but be shocked. He hurriedly got up and quickly walked out of the living room. He moved closer to Zhang Feng and asked, "Fengzi, what is this outfit?" "This outfit is called a Chinese tunic suit." Li Shimin still didn't understand why they were dressed like this. Li Qingxian and the others were already panicking like dogs. After Li Shimin asked Zhang Feng a few questions, he remained silent. Meanwhile, the officials in the hall had already moved their chairs and benches outside. Everyone stared at him, dumbfounded. After seeing this, they felt even more uneasy. What's going on? Didn't Fengzi say that? It was very cool. This, however, they were already forced to do something beyond their abilities. They could only brace themselves and continue. Anyway, they were definitely going to be beaten up. Didn't they see that Wei Zhang and the others' faces were already ashen? At this moment, everyone could only pray that their dance could subdue this group of people. Otherwise, Li Shimin calmed himself down, glanced at Li Qingxian and the others, and then silently sat down next to Hou Junji. But at this moment, Li Shimin began to speculate about Zhang Feng's intentions. But when he saw that Zhang Feng was directing the musicians as if nothing had happened, his face not red or his breath not even panting, Li Shimin could only restrain himself and wait. What happened? Why is it so lively? At this moment, Li Yuan's voice came from behind them. When Li Shimin and the others heard this, they felt a headache. When Zhang Feng heard this, his eyes could not help but light up. He laughed and said, "Old Master Li, why are you here too?" Li Yuan looked at the strangely dressed Li Qingxian and the others and said in surprise, "Didn't I just hear that you came back and even tinkered with something fun? Didn't I come?" "Brat, if you have something fun, you don't even call the old man. Are you looking down on the old man?" Zhang Feng hurriedly apologized. "Old master, please take a seat. Since you've come, how about we begin?" Li Yuan chuckled and sat next to Li Shimin, asking in a low voice, "What are you doing?" Li Shimin's lips twitched. Zhang Feng taught Xian and the others a dance. He said that he wants to show it at tomorrow's poetry competition. We want to see what he's tinkered with. As soon as he heard that it was a dance, Li Yuan's interest was immediately piqued. Dance. Good, good, good. Let him dance, let him dance. Ha ha ha, Qian, this brat is already so old. The old man has never seen him have this kind of hobby. Li Shimin and the others couldn't help but shake their heads. Actually, speaking of which, if Li Qingxian danced, it really wasn't a big deal. What was this? This was filial piety. What was wrong with a grandson dancing for his grandfather, Lao Tzu? It's just that at this time, everyone's thoughts were moving like lightning. No one knew what they were thinking. Fang Xianling glanced at Wei Zhang. He saw that Wei Zhang's eyes were slightly narrowed, looking at the clothes of the people in the field. No one knew what he was thinking about. And that Du Ruhui was also using his gaze to look for something in the crowd. But after looking around, he actually discovered that everyone was like this. He couldn't help but almost spit out a mouthful of old blood. But thinking about it again, since the crown prince was the leader, let's just wait and see. At this time, Li Qingxian, Du Go, Zhang Sun, and Qing Chimo were still fine. Only that Qing Chimo and the others stood in line. Under Zhang Feng's gesture, they slightly slid their right leg forward parallel to the front. This stroke wasn't hurried, but it almost took everyone's lives. That huge belly, coupled with those strong muscles, caused the eyelids of everyone present to twitch in unison. Qing Yaojin slapped his eyes, pretending that he couldn't see. At this time, that Qing Chimo seemed to have seen through everyone's thoughts. He somewhat shyly pulled his belly in. At this time, Zhang Feng was also prepared. He and Jingshu came together. Zhang Feng held a jade flute in his hand, bowed, and said, "Everyone, this dance is called street dance." This little one's inspiration came from the grasslands, as well as the scene of people singing and dancing after a victory on the battlefield. Next, this little one will use the song to lead the dance and perform loyalty to the country. Chapter 1188. The smoke signal rises, following Zhang Feng's resounding singing voice. In the next moment, the musicians of Swallow Descent Tower began to play according to the tune Zhang Feng had given them. At the beginning, a low bugle horn sounded, as if it was the bugle horn that signaled the charge. Following that, a series of heavy drum beats sounded. At this time, Zhang Feng's flute and Jingshu's guzheng suddenly sounded. The drum beats were like the thunderous sound of horse hooves, and the crisp sounds of the guzheng and the jade flute mixed together, making everyone feel as if thousands of troops and horses were facing off against each other. When the flute sound stopped, Zhang Feng waved his hand, and the flute player among the shocked musicians hurriedly played according to the beat. And Zhang Feng directly let out his throat, as if he was roaring, and singing loudly. The dragon banner rolls, the dragon banner rolls, the horse neighs, the sword aura is like frost, the heart is like the yellow river, who can stand against 20 years of unhindered rule. Silence. Silence. A deathly silence. At this time, Li Shimin and the others had already stood up in shock, staring at Zhang Feng with dumbfounded eyes. And Li Qingxian and the others who were dancing behind him. Li Qingxian and the others were also immersed in the music, and were incomparably excited. In a situation where there was no music accompaniment, they always felt so awkward that they wanted to die. But now? With Zhang Feng singing, and the sound of instruments that they had never heard of before, their blood actually began to burn. They were all young people, who had not dreamed of a blood-stained sand city. But now? They could actually feel such a scene from a song. How could this not move them? At this time, Li Shimin and the others did not need to be said. After all, they were people who had personally experienced that era. Although they were in high places, they could still feel the heroism of the blood-stained battlefield in their dreams in the middle of the night. This was actually seen in a song, in a dance. This was undoubtedly not the most shocking part. At this moment, everyone was still staring intently at the movements of Zhang Feng, Li Qingxian, and the others, afraid that they would miss even the slightest detail. As for Niu Jinda, Qing Yao Jin, and the others, they had long since clenched their fists so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. It was as if what was before their eyes was no longer music or dance, but a real battlefield. On the battlefield, their sons, their brothers who had once died, were still waving their butcher's knives as they charged into the enemy camp again and again. He shouted angrily, and blood and smoke danced in the air, at this moment, in the Zhang mansion. Everyone looked at the dance in the field, and no one dared to look down on it. How is this **King dance? This was something that had truly happened to them. After all, the guards and servants in Zhang mansion were all veterans who had retired from the army. The loud, low, sometimes excited, sometimes hoarse, sometimes tragic music and singing had already made their eyes water. Brother. Prince Zhang hasn't forgotten about you. His Majesty has not forgotten us. You can all rest in peace. Okay. Qing Yao Jin was the first to lose his composure, and his furious bellow made Jingshu pale. Zhang Feng was so frightened that he almost raised his brick and smashed it at Qing Yao Jin. Qing Yao Jin also realized that something was wrong, and he awkwardly scratched his head and chuckled. Sorry, this one couldn't hold back. The most miserable of all was Hou Junji. Qing Yao Jin was sitting next to him, and just now, in his excitement, Qing Yao Jin had slapped the tea on the table, splashing it all over Hou Junji's face. But Hou Junji was completely oblivious to this. He was simply staring in stupefaction at Li Qingxian and the others, who were getting more and more excited. Today, Du Ruhui's health was very poor. He was sick. His sickly face was already flushed red. Finally, a hint of color had returned to his ghastly pale face. As for Wei Zheng, he was an honest person, but at this moment, he was also a little excited. He clenched his fists tightly and looked at the dance. As Qing Yaojin's voice fell, the second sound rang out. He originally didn't want to be so agitated. After all, he was a cultured man, but he truly couldn't hold back. Moreover, his son, Wei Shuyu, was among the dancers. As Lao Tzu's son, it would be strange if he could hold back. Although Zhang Sun Wuji's eyes were also fixed on the dance, he didn't let his thoughts wander. That brat Zhang Feng was a talent. Ever since Yuchi Yu left, anyone with a discerning eye could see that this fellow had taken her virginity, but he still hadn't gotten married. If Wuxia got pregnant, even if she became Zhang Feng's concubine in the future, her status would still rise because of her son. There seemed to be a few distant relatives in the family, and a few women in the family. Zhang's son Wuji couldn't help but secretly compare Wuxia Zhang Yuyao, and that Jingshu in his heart. The song soon ended. Li Qingxian and the others were already so tired that they were panting, but there wasn't a single drop of hot blood left in their hearts. Although their chests were heaving up and down, their gazes were still fixed on Li Shimin and the others. However, Li Shimin and the others were strangely quiet. Li Qingxian was a little disappointed that he didn't receive his father's and the retired emperor's approval, but he didn't mind. After all, it was such an awe-inspiring feast. Even if he was in the middle of it, he still found it hard to calm down, let alone his father. Zhang Feng glanced at everyone and said with his hands behind his back, "Li Gan, what did I teach you before? Tomorrow is the official debut, but there are a few moves that are still a little rusty and can't be relaxed. This won't do." Chapter 1189. How could Li Qingxian dare to oppose Zhang Feng at this moment? Didn't he see that his father and the others had made them dumbfounded? At this moment, they were still in a state of extreme excitement. Hearing Zhang Feng's words, Li Qingxian immediately stood in a military posture and said, "Teacher, please instruct us." "Instruct what?" Immediately, get the hell out of here for training. If something goes wrong tomorrow, be careful of washing the toilet bowl for me for a month." Yes. Washing the toilet bowl was nothing. At this moment, they had already seen the shocking effect of the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet. Even if they were asked to wash the toilet bowl in advance, they would do it. This was the best chance to become famous. Li Qingxian was a little scared. If Zhang Feng really didn't let him go on stage because of his strong request, then the consequences would be, he would probably have the thought of hanging himself and committing suicide right now. After the group of excited youths slipped away, Zhang Feng smiled and signaled for Jingshu to leave. The musicians were still playing the tune just now. Zhang Feng knew that they had to slow down at this moment. After all, it was the first time for everyone to be in a bridal sedan chair. After everyone calmed down for a long time, Li Shimin was the first to recover. He took a deep breath and said, "Good. Feng Zi, cough. I really didn't expect you to be able to think of such a dance. If this dance can really stand out in tomorrow's Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, then this time, you really did a great deed for the emperor." Li Shimin wasn't wrong. Unknowingly, Zhang Feng had done him a huge favor. Moreover, it was a great favor. Didn't you all say that my country was built with iron and blood? Didn't you all say that the people under me were all of humble origins? Then, take a good look for me now. What is my crown prince? What is this? What does this dance represent? Not only do I want to spread the word of this dance, but I also want all the government offices in the various states to immediately take action. They must spread this dance song to the point where all the people must learn it by the end of this year. I want to see who still dares to say that I only know how to fight on horseback. Li Shimin was very excited. If Ho Junji hadn't coughed to remind him, he would have blurted out Wang Chang's identity. But so what? So what if he laid his cards on the table now? He, Li Shimin, could already see the dawn of the Great Tang's rise, could see the chance to remove the hat he had been brooding over for so long. In the dance just now, he saw the brothers who had fought alongside him during his time as the Emperor of Qin. Now that he thought of this, how could Li Shimin continue? After gulping down several cups of wine, he hurriedly got up and said, "Fengzi, I've learned a lot today. You've taught me well. I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. Let's drink and chat in the future." As he spoke, Li Shimin left, leaving Zhang Feng dumbfounded. Zhang Feng was left dumbfounded. He didn't know what was wrong with Li Shimin. Before he could react, Wei Zheng and the others had already gotten up and left. By the time it was Ho Junji's turn, Ho Junji's heart was already in a state of turmoil. He wanted to say something. But he couldn't say anything. He just patted Zhang Feng on the shoulder and said, "Kid, you did very well. In truth, the old man came today to inspect your preparations for the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet on behalf of His Majesty. Then dare I ask Duke of Qin, what do you think of this kid's poetry meet?" Ha ha ha. Ho Junji heartily laughed and left in a carefree mood. "Kid, do you have any more of the clothes my grandson and the others are wearing? If you do, make a few for the old man. The old man feels that these things suit the old man's temperament very well." Zhang Feng turned around and saw Li Yuan's shining eyes, and he couldn't help but tense up. This old brat isn't here to cause trouble, is he? When he thought of the things Li Yuan and Li Shimin had swindled from him, Zhang Feng's mind instantly went on alert. "I don't have any. If you want it, you have to pay. This thing is this kid's expense." Without waiting for Zhang Feng to finish speaking, Li Yuan looked at Zhang Feng with boundless disdain. "Hey, I knew that you were a money grubber. This is the most valuable thing in the old man's hands. You have to be careful for the old man. If the old man finds out that you broke this thing, the old man will definitely skin you alive." Zhang Feng looked at the hairpin in Li Yuan's hand that looked like a needle made of blood jade, and his mind was already shaken. Because of this thing. This was an incredible thing. The jade hairpin itself was very rare. Crucially, this jade hairpin was shaped like a tiger, with the words Feng Lang Ju Su carved on the front paw of the tiger. The abdomen of the tiger slowly tapered into the shape of a hairpin. Now that he saw these words, there was no need to say anything. This thing. Actually, it was a tiger tally that Emperor Wu of Han had given to Wuxia, and it was made into the shape of a hairpin. Who would have thought that the highest military tally of the Great Han Dynasty was a hairpin? That was the most terrifying power in the world at that time. But, at this time, Zhang Feng had already put Li Yuan's words to the back of his mind. He grinned as he held the hairpin and muttered, "Rich, rich, that damn Lao Tzu is rich." Li Yuan somewhat had the impulse to kick this brat flying out with a kick. With a dark face, he asked, "Old man is asking you something? Did you hear him? These clothes, when are you going to give them to the old man?" "Right away, you kid, go up the mountain to find old Yu's people. You can have as many clothes as you want. If you don't like any of them, this kid can make them for you on the spot." Ha ha ha. Chapter 1190. Zhang Feng did not expect to encounter such a treasure here. This thing, it was undoubtedly a treasure. The commander's seal of Wolf House Su Huatsubing. This, however, when Zhang Feng thought about it, he felt that it was inconceivable. "Old master, this thing should belong to the level of a national treasure. How did you get it?" At this moment, Li Yuan also realized the seriousness of the problem. Just now, it was just a moment of excitement. In addition, he really had something to ask of Zhang Feng. He thought that Zhang Feng would not discover the value of it. However, he was wrong. Li Yuan was also a little worried. He looked around and finally pulled Zhang Feng into the study. Only then did he say, "This thing, the reason why I told you not to break it for me is because of this." When the old man was in Taiyuan, he met the retired emperor by chance. You should have heard of the retired emperor, right? Taiyuan? The retired emperor? At this moment, Zhang Feng seemed to realize something. After all, when the army was raised in Taiyuan, the old and new Tang books had mentioned the secret. That was, when Guan Long and the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans wanted to overthrow the Sui dynasty, they gave Li Yuan a lot of treasures. In addition, when they attacked the Sui dynasty's treasury, it was inevitable that those things would become the retired emperor's spoils of war. This thing should also be among them. However, how did it fall into the hands of the old man? Li Yuan saw that Zhang Feng wanted to delve deeper and was also a little worried. If one did not know the origin of this thing, they would generally only treat it as a valuable treasure. However, now, this kid actually recognized the origin of this thing. Then, there was more to say. "Kid, the origin of this thing was that we sponsored the retired emperor. When the retired emperor hosted a banquet to entertain the old man, he took out 10 things and let the old man choose at will. I chose this. Now you should know what is going on, right? Although I'm giving it to you because of the Academy, it's equivalent to giving the Academy a heavyweight treasure. However, let me give you a piece of advice. If the item is there, the person will be there. As for the item, it should be destroyed. Zhang Feng's eyelids twitched. What will happen? Hee hee. Zhang Feng almost trembled and stuffed this thing into Li Yuan's hands. If this thing was used well, it would definitely be a godly tool for showing off. However, if there was even the slightest mistake, Zhang Feng's head would really be in danger. However, this thing was already in his pocket. When the time came, he would have to make it his own. Otherwise, he wouldn't feel at ease holding it in his hands. Seeing that Zhang Feng had recovered his original nature, Li Yuan nodded his head in satisfaction. This thing was actually a symbol of his power. As long as this thing was present, Zhang Feng's life would be guaranteed. At the very least, if the 5 surnames and 7 great clans wanted to touch Zhang Feng, they would have to look at this commander's seal. Many people from the 5 surnames and 7 great clans had once served under Wuxia. It could be said that without Wuxia and Emperor Wu of Han, there would be no 5 surnames and 7 great clans. That was why the Tang dynasty was in such a balanced situation. This meant that the 5 surnames and 7 great clans were able to reach a balance with the imperial family. Many times, it was because they hoped that one person would appear to rule the entire country. More importantly, it was because of this commander's seal. Back then, Emperor Wu of Han had personally held a banquet for these 5 surnames and 7 great clans. These things were secrets that the imperial family of each dynasty had to be familiar with. Only by balancing the relationship with these big clans could one's power be more stable. At this moment, Zhang Feng wasn't clear about these things and didn't know the use of this commander's seal. In his heart, this thing was actually just a slightly more precious antique. All right, kid. This old man won't talk nonsense with you anymore. Old man, I heard that you're preparing to find a mine yourself. How are you going to deal with the 5 surnames and 7 great clans? A hint of coldness flashed in Zhang Feng's eyes. If they don't take drastic measures, then it's fine. I, Zhang Feng, will definitely not touch them for the time being. However, they're bullying Lao Tzu. Without coal and steel, many of my things and experiments can't be done. What is this? This is simply cutting off Zhang Feng's source of income. What do you think I'll do? But, it's still a little early. Wait for half a year. Wait for my firearms to be popularized. Wait for the situation at the border to stabilize. Wait for all these messy things to be dealt with. Then, it will be time for me to make a move on him. Li Yuan did not know what kind of toy that flaming blunderbuss was. He also didn't know why Zhang Feng had placed such heavy hopes on this firearm. However, he also hoped for Zhang Feng and was worried that Zhang Feng would really confront these people from the 5 surnames and 7 clans head-on. Sigh. Li Yuan's heart was filled with mixed feelings. Kid, this old man isn't here to advise you. After all, these 5 surnames and 7 clans do indeed cover the sky with one hand. Many of our things will inevitably come into conflict with them. Therefore, this old man hopes that when the time comes, you, kid, must not rush to the front. Zhang Feng smiled playfully. Old man, you don't know, come on, does this old man not know you? Do you think you're the only one who knows martial arts? Chapter 1191. Mid-Autumn Festival. No matter which dynasty it was a very grand event. Since 3 days ago, the whole Chang'an city was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. Even at night, the lanterns and oil lamps on the streets of Chang'an city never went out. It seemed to be conveying the joy of the Mid-Autumn Festival to the heavens. 3 days of preparation. Finally, the Mid-Autumn Festival came. Early in the morning. In the streets and alleys of Chang'an, the sound of firecrackers had not stopped since the morning bell rang. All the people stopped working. Wearing new clothes that they were reluctant to wear and only wore once during the new year, they walked with their heads held high in the bustling Chang'an, Dong'an, Xi'an, and even the markets of Shao Mountain. On both sides of the streets of Chang and city, from the three imperial city gates of Hangguang and Vermilion Bird to the Anhuaming de Qi Xia Gate, and then to the Xuanwu Gate, Xing and Gate, and Fong Lin Gate, they formed a line from the inside to the outside of the palace. On the streets that ran through Chang and the imperial palace, red lanterns and straight red ribbons could be seen on both sides of the streets. On the ribbons, there were lantern riddles, word riddles, and so on stuck on the ribbons. Every 3 meters, there would be a few palace guards or people from the Ministry of Works with a cart full of prizes to register. This was something that the people of Chang and had been looking forward to for a long time. There was nothing else on these carts except for all kinds of cakes and mooncakes made by the pastry chefs of Chang and city and the palace during this period of time. Once you guessed a lantern riddle or word riddle, you would get a mooncake. If you guessed 2, so on and so on. Until the first place in the market was selected, and then the Vermilion Bird Gate, Hangguang Gate, and Hangguang Gate were recommended to participate in the next round. Here, every time you won, you would get a stone of grain or 100 coins as a reward. This would continue until the winner of the lantern riddle was selected. This person would be directly recruited by the officials of the Ministry of Works as an exception. This was also the most attractive part of the Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet every year. All the young talents of the Tang dynasty would come to Chang and city before the poetry meet for this quota. It was also a chance for them to soar into the sky. If a person performed well in the lantern riddles, he or she would be directly employed as an advisor by the nobles in Chang and city. That was tantamount to becoming a phoenix. Being chosen by these nobles and ministers was directly related to whether or not one could pass the Grand Scholar exam. After all, the current imperial examinations were mostly recommended by these people. If there was no recommendation, then he would have to take the test. As for the results, one could imagine. From this, it could be seen how rare this Mid-Autumn poetry meet was. Early in the morning of the Mid-Autumn Festival, the moment the firecrackers exploded, the drums would sound from the tower of the Vermilion Bird Gate to announce the start of the Mid-Autumn Festival. As for the Mid-Autumn poetry meet, that would have to wait. After all, this was just an appetizer. The people of the 4 major academies in Chang and did not bother to get involved. What a disgrace. They could directly enter tonight's poetry recital through the academy, but the common people could only watch from the periphery of the poetry recital. The main venue of tonight's poetry recital was set in the East Market. The Peace Square, Xianyang Square, Daoisting Square and Changle Square of the Eastern Market had already prepared everything long ago. On the surface of the lake at the center of the Eastern Market, flower boats were already floating on the surface of the water. As the main character this time, Yan Laozi of Yan Lai Lu was currently standing on the boat with her hands on her hips, directing the singers and servants to decorate the main venue for tonight's event. There were 13 flower boats of various sizes. The 3 largest boats of the 3 stages had already been connected. On the deck of the flower boat, there was a newly built huge platform with a waterside pavilion and so on the platform. It was very splendid. This was also the place to accommodate the nobles of Chang and city, as well as the students of the major academies to show their talents tonight. But this time, it was different. And also because of this difference, the number of people who participated in the poetry recital even exceeded the number of people who participated in the previous Mid-Autumn poetry meet by more than half. They just wanted to see the brilliance of Zhang Feng with their own eyes. They also wanted to see the elegance of Zhang Feng when he became a great Confucian scholar. But until now, the sun was already high up in the sky. Zhang Feng was still sleeping in the room. And Li Qingxian and others squatted in front of Zhang Feng's door with a speechless face, smoking one cigarette after another. After an unknown amount of time, the door to Zhang Feng's room slowly opened. Seeing this, Li Qingxian hurriedly rubbed his sore legs and kept looking through the crack of the door, as if he wanted to see if there was any treasure in Zhang Feng's room. Zhang Feng was so angry that he slapped Li Qingxian's forehead. "What are you looking at? You sleep alone? Or else? Well, by the way, Feng, when are we going to the venue?" "The venue has already started." Zhang Feng touched his flat stomach and waved his hand. "Let's eat. After dinner, accompany me to go fishing." We'll go at night. Chapter 1192. Zhang Feng wasn't in a hurry. Only the most powerful person would be the last one to arrive. Besides, why should he go to the venue now? Guess the riddles? Forget it. With his limited knowledge, do you want him to guess riddles on the lanterns? In less than 10 minutes, his background was all figured out. Zhang Feng knew how many people were waiting to find out his background. Tonight was bound to be not simple. But Zhang Feng also knew what he was capable of. Last night, Jingshu introduced Zhang Feng to the poetry gathering for almost the whole night. From the riddles at the beginning to the selection of talents in the palace to the final battle. Although it was not as real as a martial arts competition, the battle between ink and saliva was the most attractive part. Zhang Feng originally wanted to go there early in the morning. But after the candlelight talk last night, Zhang Feng chickened out. He would not go if he could. No matter who. If it weren't for the fact that tonight was arranged for him by the 4 great Confucian scholars, and that the opening of the academy was imminent, his identity as a great Confucian scholar had been decided a few months ago, he would not have bothered to come. To be honest, he just came to brag and let the literati in the world recognize his identity as a great Confucian scholar. But there would also be many people who wanted to make a fool of him and step on him to get to the top, not including the 5 families and 7 clans and the Shandong gentry. As for the people of Guanlong, Zhang Feng didn't know yet, but these people would definitely come to participate. Zhang Feng was a little irritated. So he decided to go fishing and think about the layout of tonight. Tonight was different from the past. Tonight was full of uncertain factors. If he didn't play it well, not to mention the identity of a great Confucian scholar, even the reputation he had built before would be wiped out. In the living room, Zhang Feng was eating absent-mindedly while staring at the dishes on the table in a daze. Li Qingxian and others kept staring at Jingshu intentionally or unintentionally, as if they wanted to see something from Jingshu's face. Jingshu was the most embarrassed at this moment. But that steamed bun was not to be trifled with. She bared her canine teeth and glared at them. You're all bad people. Brother Feng Zi, they're bullying Sister Jingshu. Brother Crazy, go and spank their little butts. Otherwise, Sister Jingshu will be angry. In the end, they were defeated. Zhang Feng looked up and saw that Jingshu's face was indeed red. He then said with a dark face, if you're full, then get out of Lao Tzu's house. Wear your coquettish clothes and go to Chang, and until the poetry gathering starts tonight, okay? Don't. When Qing Chumo and the others heard this, their faces suddenly paled. Although this outfit was very flashy, they also wanted to wear it out to show off, but what time was it now? It wasn't even noon yet. How could he run all the way to the evening at this hour? Forget it. His life was more important. Feng Zi, well, aren't you worried at all today? Li Qingxian hurriedly interrupted. Zhang Feng didn't even lift his eyelids. What do I have to worry about? Isn't it just a poetry gathering? Don't tell me I'm afraid. No. I mean, if the people of the 5 families and 7 clans also want to interfere, then, should we set up a plan first, or inform Lord Zhangsun? This morning, people from Duke Xiao and Duke Chen came to report that they and His Majesty won't be attending tonight. Only Lord Li Shaogong, the king of Hejian, will come in person. Even the imperial family won't come? Zhang Feng was slightly disappointed. He thought he could see His Majesty this time. After all, His Majesty would definitely attend such a grand event under normal circumstances. But why didn't His Majesty attend this time? Then, will the Crown Prince and the retired Emperor come? No, what about the Empress? Even less, Li Qingxian didn't know what to say. How could His Majesty and the others not come? It's just that it's inconvenient for them to come out and meet you because of their identities. Do you think His Majesty will really let those guys recruit disciples unscrupulously at this time? Although in the eyes of His Majesty and the others, except for Feng Zi, everyone else was trash and couldn't enter His Majesty's eyes, these people were still talents after all. It would be good to recruit more people. Li Qingxian hurriedly added, but His Majesty's personal eunuch will personally observe everything that happens tonight and report everything to His Majesty in detail. Zhang Feng was a bit confused. If His Majesty had the time, why didn't Li Shimin come himself? This was a good time for him to recruit people's hearts. Why didn't he think of it? Zhang Feng didn't think too much about it. After all, this was His Majesty's business. Maybe His Majesty was delayed by other things. But, was it so difficult to meet His Majesty? Zhang Feng couldn't help but curse silently. Logically speaking, the things he made now should have been able to meet His Majesty in the political announcement hall. But why didn't His Majesty appear until now? What would happen when Lao Tzu became a great Confucian scholar tonight? Would it be done quietly like this? Wasn't this nonsense? Then why did Lao Tzu still come? Li Qingxian, have you asked around? If I become a great Confucian scholar tonight, Li Qingxian thought that Zhang Feng was worried about something, but he didn't expect him to be worried about this. He smacked his lips and said with some disdain, "Don't worry, His Majesty has already drafted the imperial edict. The eunuch who came to see it personally will add your name to the imperial edict after confirming the candidate." Chapter 1193. The autumn weather was like a young girl who loved to act spoiled. After experiencing the initial coldness and fervor, the fervor gradually dissipated as the sun set in the West Mountains. The lanterns on the streets of Chang'an City were slowly lit up. When everyone saw the lanterns lit up, they immediately headed towards the Easter market. The Imperial College, Chang'an University, and White Deer Institute, who had been prepared beforehand, also entered the venue at this moment. Chang'an was one of the 4 great institutes of the Imperial College. This was the priority. He Zhongzheng, Lu Hongwen, Ouyang Kai, and the others had been waiting at the boarding gate for a long time. As soon as they saw Zhang Feng coming with Li Qingxian and the others, they hurriedly opened their arms to welcome them. "Ha ha ha, Brother Zhang, you're finally here." Lu Hongwen smiled the brightest. This time, because of Zhang Feng, not only did he become famous in his family, but also the reputation of the Imperial College. Although it was not the time to recruit students, Hongwen Guan and the Imperial College opened their doors at the same time because of this. Although they were not as good as Chang'an University and White Deer College, they also recruited some good seedlings. They had taken another step forward in their career. How could they not be happy? Zhang Feng did not expect this guy to be waiting here, but he did not hit a smiling person. He also cupped his hands and greeted them with a smile. "Hey! The 3 of you are very early. How was it? Did you get anything?" The 3 of them laughed without saying anything. They just clustered around Zhang Feng and walked to the flower boat. "What can we get? Today is Brother Zhang's home ground. We're all here to support Brother Zhang." "Ha ha ha, is that so? Thank you for letting me win." Zhang Feng laughed and gave Li Qingxian and the others a look. Then, the 3 of them went up to the top of the ship with their arms around each other's shoulders. Only then did Lu Hongwen and the other 2 look at Jingshu, who was standing behind Zhang Feng. She was wearing a pink gauze dress and a purple veil. She clicked her tongue and exclaimed, "This must be Mrs. Zhang, right? This humble one is Lu Hongwen." "Greetings, Jingshu." "No, Madame Zhang." "Yes, I am He Zhongzheng, Ouyang Kai." "Greetings to Mrs. Zhang. I've long heard that Madame Zhang is devastatingly beautiful. Now that I've met you today, you really are a match made in heaven with Prince Zhang." Ha ha ha. When Zhang Feng saw that Jingshu was staring at him with a blushing face, he had no choice but to laugh it off. He held Jingshu's hand and boarded the boat with the 3 of them. The design of the flower boat was exquisite and luxurious. Even in the 21st century, the luxurious yachts in Zhang Feng's memory were not inferior to those in the movies and television shows. Every 3 steps he took, there would be a devastatingly beautiful woman bowing to him. There was a dazzling array of flowers, the sound of musical instruments, and the dazzling array of delicacies. Every single one of them was extremely tempting. Of course, the drinks and food here were all free. But the prerequisite was that you were qualified to board the boat. Although the boat was very large, there were more than 30 seats at the back. Among them, the old Xiaotsai and the others naturally occupied a seat early. Ouyang Sun and the others were also naturally among them. However, the old Xiaotsai, Ouyang Sun, Yu Shinan, Li Gang and the others were now sitting on the top step of the boat, which had the best visual effect. After seeing Zhang Feng arrive, they just nodded in greeting. They just took it as a greeting. Above these people, there were 3 flights of stairs. These 3 steps were naturally prepared for the crown prince, the emperor, and the retired emperor. However, at this time, besides Li Shaogong, there were 2 old eunuchs with withered faces who were half-closed and taking a nap. Zhang Feng and Ouyang Kai's seats were naturally below Ouyang Sun and the others. Don't underestimate the difference of 1 step. This was something that many people begged for but couldn't get. Wen Na and Zhongjing just smiled and sat beside them at this time. It was obvious that Li Shimin valued the official ranks of the 4 great academies' chancellors. The seats were arranged in a triangular formation. At this time, Zhang Feng and the others were sitting at the top, and the seats below were divided into 2 sides. On the 2 sides sat the military officials of the imperial court, and on the other side sat the nobles of Shandong, Cheng and City, and even the famous families of the Tang dynasty. At this time, as soon as they sat down, Wen Na and Zhongjing leaned close to Zhang Feng's ear and pointed to an old man in a red robe on the right side, saying, "Prince Zhang, this person is a fierce general of the Wang clan of Taiyuan. He may cause you some trouble later, but don't worry, Prince Zhang's talent and learning should not be underestimated." Nonsense. Lu Hongwen interrupted He Zhongjing and said, "You have seen Prince Zhang's poetry. If Prince Zhang dares to say that he is the second, who dares to say that he is the first?" "Ha ha ha, you're right, I'm thinking too much." Zhang Feng followed He Zhongjing's finger and saw that the old man was also looking at him. Zhang Feng couldn't help but ask, "I don't know who this old man is." Hearing this, He Zhongjing said seriously, "He is Mr. Yushan." Chapter 1194. It's him. Zhang Feng was secretly surprised. This man. He's a great man in the later Tang dynasty. Not only has he written many works, but he's also a great scholar who became famous earlier than Yu Shinan and the others. Today, he's here on behalf of the Wang clan of Taiyuan, which is somewhat meaningful. Didn't it say in the later Tang dynasty that this Master Yushan has always hated these noble families? Why did he come here in person? Before Zhang Feng could ask, He Zhongjing whispered again, "Maybe Brother Zhang doesn't know yet? This Master Yushan is known as the first of the 5 tones. Tonight, we'll be able to feast our ears." Ha ha. Ha ha ha. The first of the 5 tones? Are you worthy? Although Zhang Feng didn't want to discredit him, who else could be known as the first of the 5 tones except the immortal poet Li Bai? Who dares to claim to be the first? Master Yushan. Boy, I have some ideas to invite you to the academy, but now it seems that, at this time. Master Yushan saw Zhang Feng looking at him and bowed slightly as a greeting. Yu Shinan and the others just gave Zhang Feng a helpless look. As for Jingshu, she was also a little nervous at this time and clenched her small hands tightly. "Don't worry, it's okay." Zhang Feng smiled and patted Jingshu's small hands. Jingshu calmed down a little. Immediately, Zhang Feng ignored these things and began to eat and drink with Ouyang Kai and the others. The wine was the white wine he made and then gave it to Lao Li. He didn't expect him to make it so quickly. This made Zhang Feng a little surprised. When Ouyang Kai and the others learned that this magical wine was actually made by Zhang Feng, they were also a little shocked. They had indeed drunk this wine when they were in Mount E for the first time, but they didn't pay much attention to it at that time. Now that they heard that this wine was really brewed by Zhang Feng, they couldn't help but be even more shocked. However, they also knew who the Lao Li that Zhang Feng mentioned was, so they gave up on the idea of getting him. At this moment, Li Shaogong stood up slightly, coughed, and said, "Everyone, it's getting late. Because His Majesty still has important matters to attend to, this poetry gathering will be hosted by Old Man Eunuch Quan and Eunuch Hong will be the supervisors." Wait. At this moment, Mr. Yushan was the first to speak. Li Shaogong slightly frowned. Although he knew that this old man's purpose was not pure, he did not expect that he would be the first to speak. However, this old man was a great scholar. Even if the emperor came, he would have to be polite. So it's Mr. Yushan. What can I do for you? Li Shaogong cupped his hands and asked. Mr. Yushan first looked at Yu Shinan and the others, then looked around and said, "Today, old man has no other ideas. Even if Prince Zhang, who has long heard that he is the Chancellor of White Deer College and the Chancellor and Dean of Cheng, an academy, had the honor of reading some of his so-called poems, especially the one about the toast. Although the words tend to be a little rushed, the poems are all allowed. However, the kind of vicissitudes of life in this poem makes old man suspect that this poem is not made by you." Mr. Yushan's voice was very loud. It was so loud that people on and off the boat could hear him. Seeing this, everyone couldn't help but be shocked. They hurriedly pricked up their ears. Even the musicians who were playing quietly stopped playing at this moment. Hearing this, the people on the top of the boat couldn't help but have a slight change in their expressions. Who couldn't tell that he was looking for trouble? Zhang Feng naturally knew that this old fellow was up to no good. However, he still stood up and asked with a smile, "Dare I ask Mr. Yushan, what's wrong with this kid's poem? Or have you seen this kid's poem somewhere before?" Although old man has never seen or heard of this poem before, old man knows about it. "You have a teacher who roams the world?" "Oh, it's the person on the statue at the entrance of White Deer College. F***ck your grandfather. That statue was of a history professor during his university days. Zhang Feng had no choice but to make a statue of him to fool him. Until now, Zhang Feng had been thinking about what kind of expression the professor would have if he went to Shao Mountain one day and discovered this statue. However, all of this didn't matter now. Since he brought this up, it was clear what his position was. That's right. This Zhang does indeed have a benefactor who has taught me for 3 months. However, when my benefactor was teaching me, he once said, "Don't do evil because it's small, and don't do good because it's small." I believe that Mr. Yushan should also know about poetry. This Zhang has more than one poem in my hands. I believe that Mr. Yushan should have seen my other poems. Then, may I ask Mr. Yushan if my other poems are also in your possession? Which of my benefactor's masterpieces do you think they are? There were other poems. Hearing this, the literati on the boat couldn't help but burst into an uproar. Mr. Yushan remained silent. However, his silence seemed to be an acknowledgement of Zhang Feng's words. Seeing this, Zhang Feng walked forward slightly and cupped his hands towards the crowd. I've long heard that Mr. Yushan is known as the number one in the 5 characters. Today, I would like to ask Mr. Yushan for advice. How about that? Chapter 1195. Was he going to compete in poetry? Was Zhang Feng going to compete in poetry with Mr. Yushan? My God! Was he going crazy? At this moment, before the people on the boat could react. Below the boat, there was a burst of exclamations. Poetry competition! Poetry competition! Poetry competition! Shouts rang out one after another. The people further away also heard the noise here and couldn't help but ask in surprise, "What's going on? What happened on the boat?" "I don't know. It seems that Prince Zhang is going to compete in poetry with Mr. Yushan." Poetry competition? **T, isn't this like lighting a lamp in a latrine pit? He's courting death. Although Mr. Yushan is known as the best poet in 5 characters, Prince Zhang's poems are not inferior. This. On the second floor of the boat, Li Shimin, Empress Zhang's son, Li Yuan, and the others were drinking wine. They looked up with a smile and listened to the discussion without saying a word. "Second brother, aren't you worried about Prince Zhang?" Li Shimin couldn't help laughing when he heard Empress Jiangsuan's words. "I'm worried about him. That boy is not a well-behaved person. It's good enough that he doesn't harass others. Have you ever seen him make a deal that loses out?" This, Empress Jiangsun couldn't help but look sluggish. Thinking about it carefully, it was really as Li Shimin said. No wonder the emperor and the retired emperor had such a refined mood to hide here today. It turned out that they had enough confidence in Zhang Feng. However, this Mr. Yushan was an old senior who had been famous for a long time. Furthermore, his title as the #1 poet of the 5 words poetry was not an undeserved reputation. Although he did not often compose poems, the poems that he did compose were all famous poems. Whether it was Li Shimin and the others at this time, or Yu Shinan and the others on the boat, they were all a little worried at this time. Especially the old Xiaozai. He wanted to stand up several times and ask if Yushan was shameless, but he was firmly pressed down on the stool by Li Gang. Brother Zihui, don't worry. You have to believe in that kid. This is also a kind of growth. If that brat Zhang Feng can't even bear this, then what kind of achievements can he have in the future? Hearing this, Yu Shinan and the others hurriedly comforted him. Zhang Feng's path is too smooth. This is also a kind of spur. The old elementary scholar was getting anxious. That may be the case, but today is. If something goes wrong, then, Li Gang and the others laughed and pointed at the empty space in the middle of the second floor. Look over there. The old elementary scholar followed Li Shimin's gaze and saw that Li Shimin was leaning against the railing and watching everything that was going on upstairs. He couldn't help but have a thought. Could it be? Li Gang laughed and patted the old scholar's shoulder. Now, what are you worried about? With second master here, what are you afraid of? Hearing this, the old elementary scholar pretended to be calm and sat down. At this time, he looked at Mr. Yushan. His white beard was a little messy from the breeze, but under the bright moon, he still looked like an immortal expert, pouring himself a cup of wine. Hearing Zhang Feng's words and hearing the roar of the crowd, he couldn't help but feel a little angry. Please. It was only one word, but it seemed to announce the start of the competition. Hearing this, Zhang Feng said, how do we compete? Then let's use what you're best at. I believe that everyone here, as well as everyone here today, is the best witness. That day, no one knew whether your poem was true or not. If you take it out like this, it will be hard to convince everyone. But today, no matter how many poems you compose, as long as you can get everyone's approval, I will be the first to cup my hands and call you sir. How about it? After thinking, Mr. Yushan added, seeing that you're young, old man, you doesn't want to bear the name of bullying the weak. Then let's use 10 poems as the limit. How about it? Arrogant. This was simply crazy to the point of no bounds. This was everyone's feeling, especially Zhang Feng's first. Although the words were said very neatly, there was no less of a slap in the face. Zhang Feng couldn't help but be too lazy to follow the etiquette. With his hands behind his back, he lit a cigarette and waved his hand, wine. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. But in the next moment, Zhang Sun was the first to react. He hurriedly jumped on the railing a few times, from the first floor of the boat to Zhang Feng's side. Taking advantage of the situation, he took a jar of wine from someone's table and handed it to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng slapped open the mud seal and then shouted, the autumn shadow of the Jianghu flies at the beginning of the year. With the guests, I thank the green light of the pavilion. It's rare to see a smile in this mortal world. Chrysanthemums must be planted on the head. But on the festival of drunkenness, there's no need to regret the setting sun. It's been like this since ancient times. Why should Xiao Shan be the only one to wear it? Dare I ask Mr. Yushan, what do you think of my 7-word poem? Zhang Feng roared after finishing his poem. But at this time, Mr. Yushan had already sunk into deep shock. The entire boat had fallen into an inexplicable silence. Seeing this, Zhang Feng waved the jar of wine in his hand. His cheeks were slightly red as he said, in that case, this kid's second poem is coming. Lao Tzu didn't know how to write poems, but this poem by Du Mu, who was known as one of the top 3 7-word poems, Lao Tzu would like to ask you, is it good enough? Not good enough? Then Lao Tzu, come up with a few more. Aren't you known as the #1 5-word poem? Then Lao Tzu, come up with a 7-word poem. I'd like to see what you can do. Chapter 1196. Flying mirrors fill my eyes. Returning to my heart, I fold my broadsword. Turning the canopy, I travel far and wide. Climbing the osmanthus, I look up to the sky. Frost and snow on the waterways. Feathers in the forest. Looking at the white rabbit now, I can count the hairs of autumn. Below Chang'an, still white emperor city. Angry Shenchuanpu is dark, cramped half the building is bright. Crafty fights are dawning, the toad falls by itself. Drawing the bow depends on the soul, not alone. The 5-character lullaby for the Mid-Autumn Festival. What do you think, Mr. Yushan? Zhang Feng shouted again. This time, Mr. Yushan was completely dumbfounded. What do you think? The first poem had already shocked him to no end. The 7-character lullaby, that was the 7-character lullaby. It was much more powerful than the 5-character lullaby. The difficulty of the current poem was not judged by the length of the poem, but by the charm of the poem. It was the charm of the poem. At this time, the poem made by Zhang Feng had already exceeded the scope of Mr. Yushan. At this time, Mr. Yushan even felt like he was being suffocated by a mountain. This came from the dissatisfaction in Zhang Feng's poem and the artistic conception of the poem. Not to mention the second poem. Even his masterpiece of the 5-character lullaby couldn't be compared with Zhang Feng's. This was simply, and the second poem of the 5-character lullaby had already compared Chang and city to the legendary fairy-like place. This sentence was like taking the firewood from under the cauldron. How could he judge? Didn't you say Chang and city? Then what was this? But today's poem gathering was attended by all the literati of the Tang dynasty. Even the emperor was said to have come with the retired emperor. He should be hiding there and watching at this time. If by any chance he said something wrong, then today would be the day when he, Yushan, would lose all his reputation. At this time, Yushernan and the others looked at each other. Alas! Young people are still a bit hot-tempered. After all, Mr. Yushan is also a senior. The old scholar was in a good mood at this time. Hearing their words, he couldn't help but feel a little unwilling. So, this shameless Yushan just had to come up and act like an expert. Could it be that he couldn't let Fengzi fight him back? Who said that poetry, literature, and ink had to be ranked according to seniority? Isn't this a test of true ability and knowledge? First come first. This is the Tao that will allow the literary and ink Tao to flourish for a long time. Yushernan and the others smacked their lips, not knowing what to say. If they hadn't pulled back quickly, it might not have been a matter between Mr. Yushan and Zhang Feng. Instead, it would have been a battle between these two old fellows. At this moment, there were already roaring sounds coming from below and on the ship. Although the big boss on the ship didn't say anything, the voice below the ship had already announced the result. What do you think, Mr. Yushan? Are these two works of mine still acceptable? Mr. Yushan's face paled, and his body trembled slightly in the breeze. These two poems are very good, but, Prince Zhang, where it's possible to make mistakes, one should be lenient. Besides, Mr. Yushan is a renowned scholar. What you did, isn't it a disgrace? At this time, a skinny middle-aged man beside Mr. Yushan spoke up for Mr. Yushan. Hearing this, Zhang Feng's expression turned cold. Are you teaching me how to do things? That person didn't expect Zhang Feng to say such a thing. He was stunned for a moment by Zhang Feng's words. After a while, his face turned red with anger. Young people don't care about morals. Mr. Yushan can be considered a great scholar. Even if he's not as good as you in poetry, but in other aspects. Could it be that you've already surpassed Mr. Yushan? Zhang Feng laughed. Morals? Indeed, I am not as good as Mr. Yushan when it comes to writing scriptures. However, you are not as good as Mr. Yushan when it comes to poetry and literature. You must know that literature and literature are never measured by a person's age. Instead, they are measured by literature. Just like in military and military, seniority is determined by fists and victories. Pooh! Mr. Yushan, whose face was already pale, vomited blood and fainted after hearing Zhang Feng's words. The crowd was in an uproar. Li Xiaogong, who was watching the show, was also at a loss. He didn't know what to do, so he hurriedly shouted, "Quick, someone, call the imperial physician." Imperial physician? What imperial physician? Isn't that Prince Jiang rumored to be able to regenerate broken bones on Shao Mountain? This little fainting shouldn't be a problem for Prince Jiang, right? At this time, the middle-aged man sitting beside Mr. Yushan sneered again and looked at Zhang Feng. The people from the 5 surnames and 7 clans, as well as the nobles from Shandong, couldn't help but kick up a fuss. That's right, didn't that Prince Jiang claim that White Deer College has a medical course? This little illness shouldn't be a problem for him, right? If he can't even treat this little illness, then White Deer College, Li Shaogong was also in a difficult position. If no one objected, he could make the decision to suppress it. However, now that the nobles from Shandong had spoken, he couldn't say anything. He asked, "Then Prince Jiang, you?" Zhang Feng smiled faintly and said, "Mr. Yushan's heart is blocked. This little problem shouldn't be a problem for me. Give me a basin of ice water." Chapter 1197. The matter of the heart meridians being blocked. Everyone understood and understood. But this person had vomited blood, how could it be a small matter? It wasn't that the people present hadn't encountered such a situation. If it was light, they would be bedridden for a few months. If it was serious, they would never wake up. But in Zhang Feng's mouth, how could it be as simple as sleeping? Hearing this, the middle-aged man sneered and said, "Prince Jiang, it's easy to say, but can you, Wang Guicheng? You've gone too far." At this moment, Yu Shinan shouted coldly and angrily. He couldn't stand the Wang clan's way of doing things. Targeting was targeting, but at this time, he still wanted to use Mr. Yushan as a shield. Everyone present was a big shot in the literary world. Who didn't know that Mr. Yushan had always scoffed at the aristocratic families? This time, he was probably instigated to come. In addition, he had doubts about Zhang Feng's age and the fact that he could write such a poem, just like when they first saw Zhang Feng's poem, there was no difference. But now? They didn't know whether Mr. Yushan was dead or alive, but they were still nagging here. That was their fault. As for how they invited Mr. Yushan, outsiders had no right to know, nor did they want to know. But now, they were using Mr. Yushan's life to make an issue of it. Then, seeing Yu Shinan speak, Wang Guicheng, the member of the Wang clan from the Black Face Hall, heard the reprimands at this moment, and then looked at the Shandong aristocrats and the other people from the 5 families and 7 clans sitting with him. Only then did he harshly snort and sit down. After Wang Guicheng sat down, he coldly snorted and said, "Kid, aren't you very capable? I want to see how you're going to do it. But the premise is that Mr. Yushan's body probably can't wait for you to go back to Shao Mountain to prepare. I want to see you, noisy." At this moment, Li Yuan coldly snorted from the 2nd floor. At this moment, all the voices disappeared in an instant. And Zhang Feng also glanced at the 2nd floor in surprise. After seeing Li Shimin and the others looking at him with a smile and nodding, he nodded. "Why do you need to go back and prepare for such a small matter? Tai Niu, prepare a basin of cold water for me." "All right." Cheng Chumo and the others stood behind Zhang Feng impatiently. They seemed to be waiting for Zhang Feng to give the order and they would rush forward at any time. At this moment, after hearing Zhang Feng's words, he hurriedly ran off the boat. Li Qingxian and the others had already stepped onto the top of the boat. "Feng Zi, are you sure you can handle this?" Zhang Feng rolled up his sleeves and asked Zhang Sun and the others to lay Mr. Yushan flat on the ground. Then, he found a brick and placed it under Mr. Yushan's head. He said lightly, "Have you ever seen me do something I'm not sure of? Everyone. Today, I'll show you that this is White Deer College's medical science." Zhang Feng's loud roar caused everyone present to stretch their necks out in anticipation. Back when they were on the mountain, they knew that he had treated Niu Jinhu's broken leg. However, at least they had heard about it. Not many people had seen it with their own eyes. However, at this moment, He Zhongzheng, Ouyang Kai, and Lu Hongwen hurriedly appeared beside Zhang Feng and asked, "Prince Zhang, do you need our help? Or do you want me to find you a doctor?" They were really worried that if something happened to Zhang Feng, he would be dead meat. This time, many people from Guanlong had come. They mainly wanted to take a closer look at Zhang Feng and see if he was worthy of being roped in. This was why the three of them were so nervous. However, Zhang Feng still shook his head. No need. This is just a small matter. Why do the three of you have to do it? As he spoke, Zhang Feng waved his sleeves and said, "Everyone, disperse. Let me do it." When the crowd saw this, they couldn't say anything. They could only open up an empty space. How could Zhang Feng know anything about medicine? However, he still knew the first aid knowledge of survival in the wild. After all, when he was young, he often climbed trees to dig out bird nests. Mr. Yushan's symptoms, if you wanted to say it was big, it was indeed quite big. It was quite serious. However, if you wanted to say it was simple, it was really simple. It was just that he couldn't catch his breath and his qi and blood surged up. Zhang Feng untied Mr. Yushan's belt. His upper body was basically naked. As everyone frowned, Zhang Feng grabbed Mr. Yushan's two arms. Then, he shook them left and right. Finally, on Mr. Yushan's chest, his hands overlapped, and fiercely pressed his heart a few times. With such a press, Mr. Yushan, who was already pale and the blood at the corner of his mouth had stopped flowing, turned pale. Then, he opened his mouth and spat out a big mouthful of blood. Hua! In an instant, even Li Xiaogong couldn't help but hurriedly walk down. He looked nervously at Zhang Feng and Mr. Yushan. Although Mr. Yushan spat out blood at this time, his chest was already violently heaving up and down. Moreover, there was a trace of color on his face. This, everyone couldn't help but cry out in alarm again. However, as if they were afraid of disturbing the rescue process, they hurriedly shut up. Zhang Feng didn't seem to be in a hurry. After waiting for Mr. Yushan's chest to heave up and down a few times, he pinched Mr. Yushan's philtrum. Then, he reached out and took a basin of cold water from Ching Chumo's hand. He poured it on Mr. Yushan's face. Chapter 1198. Everyone was dumbfounded. Wang Guiqing directly shouted, "Impudent! Zhang Feng, is this the treatment you were talking about? I think you're clearly trying to murder him. Your Highness, you saw it with your own eyes. Zhang Feng is trying to murder him in public. Hurry up and let him." "Shut up." Li Xiaogong's face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. He glared at Wang Guiqing and said, "You want to do something for old man?" "This." Wang Guiqing's face paled. He wanted to say something, but nothing came out. He could only say with a stiff face, "Your Highness, you saw it. Zhang Feng is trying to murder him. This is what everyone saw. You can't be so biased towards Zhang Feng, right?" Li Xiaogong was too lazy to pay attention to him. He personally squatted beside Mr. Yushan and asked, "Kid, how is it?" Li Qingxian and the others also hurriedly squatted down. They looked at Mr. Yushan, whose chest was violently heaving, and were somewhat worried. If this didn't work, then it would be a big joke. At this time, Li Xiaogong also didn't know what to do. He could only wait and see if a miracle could happen. After all, how was this a treatment method? He had vomited blood and fainted, and because of anger. How could it be so simple? No one dared to believe it. Li Shimin anxiously wanted to go upstairs to check, but because of his identity, he finally anxiously walked in circles on the second floor. At this time, Mr. Yushan's chest, who was lying on the ground, slowly calmed down under everyone's shocked gazes. At this time, Wang Guiqing cried out again, "Your Highness, please make a decision for Mr. Yushan and punish the evil thief Zhang Feng as a warning to others." At this time, under Wang Guiqing's voice, everyone couldn't help but feel uneasy. Although the Shandong landowning households and other landowning households were prepared to probe before, they didn't have much prejudice against Zhang Feng. After all, they all knew about the close relationship between Zhang Feng and the Li royal family. As for Wang clan, previously, they were the ones who had cut off the iron source. Now, they knew that Zhang Feng had sent people to look for iron ore. What was this? This was simply going too far. The Wang clan controlled most of the mineral veins in the Tang dynasty. How could they allow a brat to own a mine? This time, the main objective of targeting the shipyard and Zhang Feng was to obtain the legendary invulnerable shield and invincible spear. Moreover, they had also heard that Zhang Feng had already created a spear that could pierce through anything. To them, this was a huge threat. What's more, Li Shimin had been trying to destroy their hearts for a long time. However, at this moment, he appeared to be a little impatient. The identities of Yu Shinan, Mr. Yushan, and others were obvious. Moreover, Zhang Feng had a deep relationship with these people. They also saw the cooperation between Zhang Feng and Guan Long's people and wanted to get some benefits from Zhang Feng. This was the hard truth. If they fell out with each other, no one would benefit. For the other landowning households, this was the last thing they wanted to see. The key was to fall out with the Li royal family. That would be the biggest mistake. At least they didn't want to do that now. Besides, this mid-autumn festival poetry meet, anyone with discerning eyes could see that it was the four great scholars and the emperor who personally supported Zhang Feng. The purpose was to let the world recognize Zhang Feng's identity as a great scholar. At this time, they could sit down and drink wine, listen to music, compete in poetry, and play with words. How could the Wang clan be so blind? At this time, everyone was silent. On the one hand, everyone knew whose voice it was just now. What's more, even if it wasn't this voice, everyone knew that the emperor must be watching everything here. The Wang clan's idea was still too simple. Their idea was that even if the emperor and the four great scholars protected Zhang Feng at this time, it was not so easy to do so in the eyes of the public. Once Li Shimin showed up, they dared to expose Li Shimin's identity in front of him. This was the Wang clan's reliance. However, although they had a good plan, they didn't know that at this moment, Li Shaogong was thinking and expecting a miracle. As for someone wanting to impeach Zhang Feng, that was impossible. They really didn't take Mr. Yushan seriously. Even if it was a little troublesome to deal with it, they could suppress it if they forced it. After all, at this time, Zhang Feng was so popular. Who dared to say anything? When the time came, they only needed to announce Zhang Feng's poetry collection and the matter would soon be forgotten. At this time, some people could bear it, but some people really couldn't. For example, the old Xiaotsai. After all, the old Xiaotsai was a top figure in the Sui dynasty. At this time, although he hadn't been in public for a long time, even those people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans, or those of the Shandong aristocrats, had to give him some face. This was also the reason why, except for Wang Guicheng, no one dared to say anything. It was because of the old Xiaotsai. But only a few people knew this. As for the others, Wang Guicheng. That's enough. The old Xiaotsai slowly put his hands behind his back, glared at Wang Guicheng and the others, and said coldly, "Don't make trouble again. Back off." The old Xiaotsai's voice was very cold. It was so cold that Zhang Feng couldn't help but tremble after hearing it. This voice, so domineering. What was the old Xiaotsai's identity before? At this time, Wang Guicheng seemed to be startled by the old Xiaotsai's imposing manner. At this time, Li Gang also slowly stared into Wang Guicheng's eyes, and said, "Back off. If you continue to twist words and force logic, no one can save you, including that old guy from your Wang family." At this time, Wang Guicheng was really scared. Li Gang was the crown prince's junior tutor, and a somewhat influential figure. Speaking of which, he could be said to be on an equal footing with Mr. Yushan. Sometimes, his reputation was even higher than Mr. Yushan's. At this time, seeing him speak, Wang Guicheng couldn't help but ask with an ugly face, "Junior advisor, what are you? Old man told you to shut up." Wah! At this time, Mr. Yushan, who was lying on the ground, once again spat out a lump of dark blood. Then he breathed heavily and weakly opened his eyes. At this time, everyone was shocked. And Wang Guicheng's face instantly became paler than paper. It's over. Chapter 1199. This time, Wang Guicheng was really done for. Originally, he had found someone to trick Mr. Yushan into coming to the poetry meet. Otherwise, how could Mr. Yushan leave the mountain so easily and do such a thing? Wasn't this destroying his own reputation? He had expected Zhang Feng to counterattack, and this was the result he wanted. But the result, obviously, it didn't develop in the direction he wanted. Instead, it had become worse. That wasn't all. The main thing was that Zhang Feng, this brat, had actually awakened Mr. Yushan. Cough cough, cough cough. Mr. Yushan's coughing made everyone's hearts tighten. Zhang Feng looked at Mr. Yushan's face again, and then said, "Bring warm water and salt." Ching Chimo hurriedly found fine salt, mixed a bowl of salt water, and handed it to Zhang Feng. At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on Zhang Feng. To be precise, they were staring at the bowl in Zhang Feng's hand, and Mr. Yushan. Mr. Yushan frowned slightly, but at this moment, his heart was in pain. He could only follow Zhang Feng's lead and drink the bowl of water. Only then did he slowly come to his senses. Once he came to, Mr. Yushan grabbed Zhang Feng's hand, and asked somewhat emotionally, "The two poems just now, were they made by you to correspond to this scene?" Not only did he not blame Zhang Feng, he even grabbed Zhang Feng and asked him about the poem. At this moment, everyone understood what was going on. They also knew that Mr. Yushan was definitely fine. Yu Shinan and the others also heaved a deep sigh of relief. However, Mr. Yushan looked at the old scholar, grabbed his hand, and sighed, "Brother Zihuai, I thought you didn't even recognize me as your junior brother. I didn't expect that you would be willing to speak up for this brat." "You, sigh." The old scholar sighed, "How can old man face you?" "Alright, let's not talk about this today. Let's talk about this first. Tell me, what kind of bewitching potion did the Wang clan feed you today? What are you up to today? If you don't tell me something, I'll burn down your Jade Mountain cottage tomorrow. Do you believe me?" Hearing this, Mr. Yushan could not help but smile bitterly. "It was I, your junior brother, who was careless and listened to slanderous words. They said that Zhang Feng's poems were stolen and that he was a swindler who gained fame by deceiving the world. Moreover, I also learned that he was your disciple. Moreover, these poems were quite similar to senior brother's style, so I..." Zhang Feng's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Seeing the two crying old men, he moved closer to Chu Suiliang and asked, "Teacher, what's going on? What kind of person was the old Xiuzai? Why does everyone know him?" Chu Suiliang looked at Zhang Feng as if he was looking at a monster. He hesitated and said, "Didn't Mr. Zihuai mention it to you?" Zhang Feng's head was like a rattle drum. Chu Suiliang, Yu Shinan, and the others could not help but shake their heads. "Mr. Zihuai did not tell you because the time is not right. When the time is right, he will naturally tell you. It's useless for you to ask. However, what I can tell you is that Mr. Zihuai was once a famous person." After saying this, no matter how Zhang Feng asked, no matter how Zhang Feng tempted or threatened, Chu Suiliang and the others did not say a word. This made Zhang Feng so angry that his face was gloomy. After the old Xiuzai and Mr. Yushan muttered for a while, they held hands and sat down at the main seat. This made Zhang Feng extremely gloomy. So, today was not his coronation ceremony, but the time for him to bury the hatchet with his old friends? Zhang Feng walked to his seat unhappily. However, halfway there, he was stopped by Mr. Yushan. "Nephew Zhang Feng, please wait a moment." He was already a nephew? Zhang Feng was a little speechless. However, he still stood where he was. After drinking a bowl of salted water, Mr. Yushan's complexion gradually improved. After eating some braised meat, he once again jumped up and down. If not for his pale complexion, who would know that this old fellow had just vomited blood and fainted? "Nephew Zhang Feng, what you said just now was right. In the literary world, there is no such thing as seniority or seniority. Only those who are more accomplished are more important. You are right, I am not as good as you in poetry. I believe that in other aspects, old man is also not as good as you. I have long heard of the mathematics on the deserted mountain, as well as the new teaching materials and so on. They are all rare in the world. If old man knew about this earlier, he would not have come out to make a fool of himself. Huh, Mr. Yushan, what are you talking about? Zhang Feng also did not understand what Mr. Yushan was thinking. However, on the whole, this matter could be considered to have passed. However, at this moment, bursts of commotion sounded one after another on the boat. This made Mr. Yushan, who had been composing a poem for a long time, become somewhat angry. Who is making a ruckus here? Hearing this, Li Qingxian hurriedly waved a piece of white paper in his hand and said, Mr. Yushan, take a look at this first. White paper. This was something that only White Deer College could afford. Furthermore, at this moment, everyone on the boat and below the boat was holding this piece of white paper in their hands and shouting excitedly. Zhang Feng frowned. He looked suspiciously at Yu Shinan and the others who were secretly laughing. He seemed to have understood something. Poem. It's a poem. It's Master Zhang's poem. Ha ha ha, it just came from White Deer College. They said it was a new poem that Master Zhang wrote a few days ago. Chapter 1200. At this moment, everyone on the ship was praising Zhang Feng's poem. Mr. Yushan got Zhang Feng's 3 poems today and got his senior brother's approval. He was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. He clapped his hands and turned to ask Li Shaogong something. Then he said, Old man and Hejian King Lord Li just discussed it. Since the old man said it, now that the old man called you Master Zhang, does anyone object? Does anyone object? He asked 3 times in a row. No one objected. What else was there to object? More than half of the big shots on the ship were familiar with Zhang Feng. As long as you were not afraid of offending people, you could object now. Even if you objected, it would be useless. Unless the emperor said it himself. However, this idea was very beautiful, but the reality was very cruel. Wang Guiqing's face was ashen. He lowered his head and drank wine. He didn't mention a word about this. Seeing that no one objected, Li Shaogong waved his embroidered robe and said, In this case, the old man announces that the Chancellor of White Deer College, Viscount Zhang Feng of Xishan, has become a great Confucian today. The old man will report to the emperor immediately. Tomorrow morning, he will enter the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Revenue, and the Ministry of Works, and announce it to the whole country. Ha ha ha, congratulations, Master Zhang. Congratulations, congratulations. Feng Zi, congratulations. Congratulations, congratulations. Congratulations. In an instant, there was a series of congratulations on and off the ship. Zhang Feng also cupped his fists and thanked them. This matter was finally resolved. It also let him breathe a sigh of relief. Just now, Mr. Yushan had simply blocked all of the things that could have happened. Otherwise, there would be more people coming out to find trouble. At this time, Mr. Yushan, Yu Shinan, and the rest of the group's poems were effective. Only then did Zhang Feng avoid a war of words. Zhang Feng was not afraid of these things. However, it was better to avoid it if it could be avoided. After all, who would be so bored as to look for trouble? Everyone, thank you very much. Thank you to my 4 teachers, thank you to the old elementary scholar, thank you to Lao Li, and thank you to everyone present. If it wasn't for your help, how could I have achieved what I have today? Li Shaogong didn't dare to stay here any longer. He quickly said, Okay, this matter is over. The old man has to go back and report. I'll leave the rest to you. Oh right, little friend Zhang Feng, tell me about your nameplate. The old man can go back and make a book for you. As soon as the word tiles were mentioned, Zhang Feng felt a little awkward. Wine immortal. Was he worthy? However, this was a name given to him by the 4 great Confucians. That was simply shameful. But I won't say it. It didn't make sense. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel a little conflicted. Well, my 4 respected teachers, why don't I change my nameplate? I'm afraid this brat won't be able to bear this token. Yu Shinan and the others also laughed. You brat, this kind of nameplate is not suitable for you. Why don't you hand this problem over to Brother Zihuai, Mr. Yushan, and Mr. Wenji? Ouyang Sun and the others also nodded. As for Ouyang Kai and the others, they could only agree. How could they have the right to speak here? When the three of them heard this, they pushed the responsibility to the old elementary scholar for a while before finally passing the heavy responsibility to him. After all, everyone could see that the old elementary scholar cared about Zhang Feng. This matter was the most suitable one for him. The old elementary scholar saw that he couldn't push the responsibility away. He thought for a while and said, "Since everyone is so fond of me, what do you think, Fengzi?" Zhang Feng knew that Ba Lan wouldn't come because of the old elementary scholar. He hurriedly bowed and said, "It's all up to you." Seeing this, the old elementary scholar thought for a while and said, "If it was before, the name of Wine Immortal, old man would also think it was good, but now," the old elementary scholar fell into deep thought again. Li Shimin couldn't stand it anymore. In fact, he had thought of a few nameplates for Zhang Feng and felt that they were quite suitable. But because of his identity, he couldn't say anything. Below the boat, everyone stared nervously at the flower boat, waiting for the old elementary scholar's answer. After a while, the old elementary scholar looked at the bright moon in the sky, then looked at Jingshu and Zhang Feng. He said, "I thought of a nameplate." As he spoke, the old elementary scholar looked at Zhang Feng with some interest. At this moment, Zhang Feng felt that something was wrong. But before he could object, the old elementary scholar said, "How about a cord?" "A cord? A cord? F***ck old elementary scholar, we have no grievances, you're tricking me." Zhang Feng's face changed color. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "No, no, no, this nameplate won't do. Old elementary scholar, let's change it." But Yu Shernan and the others' eyes lit up. "That's right. Why didn't I think of that?" Miss Jingshu's 18 strokes of Huga was famous for a time. In 15 years in Chang'an, no one was able to decipher it. But I heard that when this kid was drunk, he was able to recite it without any mistake. What is this? This is what I call true talent. That's right. Cord, old man also thinks it's very good. If you're still not satisfied with Jude, then you might as well call it Wine Immortal. Anyway, didn't you always write poems when you were drunk to show off your prowess? Chapter 1201. Cord, Zhang Feng was speechless. This was not even as domineering as Wine Immortal. He did not know what the old scholar was thinking, to actually think of such a name. But what could he do now? There was nothing he could do. Zhang Feng could only resentfully look at the old fellows who were laughing heartily, and then return to the center of the third floor of the flower boat. Li Qingxian and the others were already holding back their laughter, waiting. Seeing Zhang Feng arrive, the few of them held back their laughter and stood up straight. They knew that their chance had come. How could Zhang Feng not know what these fellows were thinking? He was too lazy to lower himself to their level. Staring at Qing Chumo, he asked, "Are the musicians ready?" "Yes, yes." Zhang Feng was angry. "Just wait, Lao Tzu will make you feel better. Let's begin." While speaking, Zhang Feng turned around, facing Li Shaogong and the others and said, "Lord Li, everything is ready, may I ask if we can begin?" Li Shaogong laughed and said, "Everything will be according to Prince Zhang's arrangement." Originally, there was a performance at the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet. Moreover, the location of the brothel boat could be clearly seen from the attics and roofs of the houses in the East Market by the shore. But in addition, today was a rare day for young men and women to come out. On this day, the young men and women in Chang'an and the surrounding towns all wanted to come to watch the meet. Most importantly, they wanted to find the person they liked. It was also the time when the matchmakers in Chang'an were the busiest. This was the custom, even the emperor had no right to take it away. In addition, at the beginning of the meet, there would be a performance by the singers of Yan Lai Lu. This performance was not the usual kind of performance by the singers of Yan Lai Lu, but a performance by the inner court of Yan Lai Lu, which could only be performed in the palace. At this time, Zhang Feng, who was rumored to be from White Deer College, and President Zhang had also prepared a special performance, as well as the most anticipated performance of Chang An's #1 beauty, Jingshu. It could be seen that at this time, under Li Xiaogong's command, these young men and women were very eager. In order to achieve the greatest effect for this dance performance, Zhang Feng had already made sufficient preparations. Last night, Zhang Feng had let Li Qingxian and the others come to the flower boat to personally set up the scene. Although the dance took up most of the space, the layout of the scene, as well as the lighting effects, were also very important for a performance. Zhang Feng made use of the candlelight refracted by the bronze mirror and arranged for people to be stationed at all four sides of the East Market. When Li Qingxian gave the order, for huge pillars of light instantly shone on the surface of the water on the first floor of the three boats. On the water surface, on the large bamboo raft that everyone thought was because the remaining materials for building the flower boats had not been transported away, Li Qingxian and the others were wearing Chinese tunic suits and sunglasses. One hand was pressed on the brim of the hat, and the other hand was slanted into the trouser pocket. Although it looked a little strange. But there was also an indescribable handsomeness and experience. The premise was that other than Qing Chimo, at this time, when the four light pillars shone on the bamboo raft at the same time, the entire boat, and below the boat, instantly rang out with waves of exclamations. Damn! What clothes are these? What kind of style is this? This. Motherf *Ker, isn't it too? So handsome. But why isn't Prince Zhang participating? If Prince Zhang is participating, then he should be the most handsome and charming. Really, it's so charming. What's that thing on their eyes? And this light, what is that thing? This, at this time, not only the people below the boat, but even the experienced and knowledgeable people like Li Shimin and Yu Shinan couldn't help but stand up. They held the railing of the flower boat and looked at the five people on the bamboo raft. At this time, when Zhang Feng saw that the lights were on, he tidied up his white robe and elegantly walked in front of Jingshu. Under everyone's astonished gaze, Zhang Feng slowly stretched out his right hand in front of Jingshu and made an inviting gesture that no one but Zhang Feng understood. He smiled and said, "Jingshu, what should we do?" Jingshu's cheeks were flushed, but she still put her hand in Zhang Feng's hand under everyone's gaze. At this moment, the musicians who had already prepared a long time ago also slowly sounded the deep and heavy drums. Dong, dong, dong. Woo! When the horn sounded, the flower boat where Jingshu and Zhang Feng were on flashed a beam of light that was reflected by the bronze mirror and shone on them. But this time the light was shining from behind, which made them look like they were floating in the air. At this time, Zhang Feng also felt like he had returned to the modern world. That feeling gradually rose in the song and the street dance of Qing Chimo and the others. At this moment, the whole Chang'an city quieted down in an instant. Even Li Shimin and the others, who had already seen this song and dance in Zhang Feng's mansion yesterday, couldn't help but be fascinated by it. Chapter 1202. Before the Tang dynasty, all the dances were either passed down from the Tujue or were a craft that other people from the Hu dynasty came to the Tang dynasty to seek a living. As for the Han people, especially the men, they always felt that this thing was something that only the rich could play with. But in the Han people's bones, this kind of singing and dancing was not as practical as wielding a gun and stick. To put it bluntly, this was a kind of thing that women prepared for men's triumphant return. But today, everyone's eyes were blinded by the dazzling light. What the hell? Dancing can be danced like this? This, is it not for women? Buttocks, legs, thrusts, what the hell, when did men become so flirtatious? Wow! Among the women present, a fat woman with dazzled eyes stared at Li Qingxian on the bamboo raft with eyes the size of copper coins. An unknown liquid was dripping from the corner of her mouth and staining her clothes. On the boat, under the boat, on the roof, and on the ground, a large group of crazy women were shouting crazily. Those women who were about to confess their feelings and those scholars who were about to show off their skills were dumbfounded. What the hell? What's going on? What the hell? Do they want us to live? Those students from Hongwen Guan, Imperial College, and Cheng and University who knew Qing Chumo and the others were envious. Damn, if Lao Tzu went to the tavern first, those 4 demons would not have the chance to show off here today. What? They are the 4 demons? Hearing this, the surrounding people could not help but be shocked. The 4 demons had been famous for a long time. Everyone knew about them. But how could the 4 demons be compared to the group of flirtatious men on the boat? Although they had not seen the 4 demons, in their hearts, the 4 demons' faces were full of curly whiskers and big beards. When did they become so handsome? No. Except for the bearded man. At this moment, Li Gang took the opportunity to look at the group of stubborn people from Cheng and University on the 2nd floor and said, "Did you see that? You were all stubborn before, trash in the eyes of your parents, trash in the eyes of the common people. But look at the people on the bamboo raft. You are all familiar with them, right?" The students from Cheng and University nodded vigorously, thinking that something good had happened. The students from Hongwen Guan and Imperial College, as well as the literati on the shore, pricked up their ears. Li Gangzai pointed at Zhang Feng who was playing the flute with Jing Shu and said, "The dean said before that so long as all of you work hard, so long as all of you are willing to learn, then the students that are ranked at the top in the year-end exam will have the opportunity to enter White Deer Academy." But Li Gang pointed at the students from White Deer College who were showing off and said, "Don't think that you can be a cut above others after entering White Deer College. If you can't pass the year-end assessment, then get the old man and come to Cheng and University." Dean Zhang Feng once said that White Deer College does not raise trash. Let me add another sentence here. Since Zhang Feng handed over Cheng and University to me and brother Cheng and University, then how can my Cheng and University be a place to hide filth? If you want to stay here, if you want to stand out among your peers, then do your best to climb up, old man. Don't think that you can be a cut above others with your current status. You will be replaced at any time. After a series of counterattacks, all the students from Cheng and University and White Deer College were boiling. There were some who were worried, and there were also some who had excited looks in their eyes. This was their chance. All of this was seen by Li Yuan and Li Shimin. Li Yuan smilingly stroked his beard and said, "Li Gang, this old fellow really has some skill." After hearing what he said, I reckon that it will be hard for these little guys not to rush forward. Father is right. However, this daughter-in-law thinks that although this kind of dance looks good, this kind of thing will inevitably fall into a disadvantageous position. The academy as a whole is more important. You want to say that doing this will be criticized by others, right? Li Yuan smilingly looked at Zhang Sun Wugo and asked. However, at this moment, Li Tai secretly took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention and secretly got drunk. In the end, he saw Li Yuan and Zhang Sun Wugo's conversation. He looked at Li Qingxian and the others with a yearning expression and said, "Mother, this son wants to learn to dance like Big Brother. It's too beautiful." In the beginning, when Li Tai called her mother, it gave everyone a big fright. However, in the end, this brat changed it. Only then did the few of them let out a big sigh of relief. Although the few of them sat in a private room, they were outside after all. If by any chance they were heard by others, it would not be good. Li Shimin looked at Li Tai whose face was red from drinking and slightly frowned. However, Li Yuan laughed loudly and held Li Tai's red but face and said, "Good grandson, do you want to learn this kind of dance?" Li Tai nodded and then pointed at Zhang Feng and said, "I also want to learn from Zhang Feng Gij." Li Yuan and Li Shimin trio could not help but look at each other and smile. Li Yuan asked again, "Then after you learn it, what are you going to do?" This time, Li Tai bit his finger and leaned on Li Yuan's chest to think for a long time. Only then did he excitedly point at Jing Shu and said, "I want to marry a girl like Jing Shu Gij." Chapter 1203. After all, Li Tai was only 8 years old at this time. At this time, the three of them did not put down what he said at this time. What could such a young child know? Even if he was given a woman, he would not know how to use it. However, Empress Zhangsun was a little stern. She scolded Li Tai, scaring Li Tai directly into Li Yuan's arms. It was also at this moment that Zhang Feng let out a high-pitched howl. This segment of the dance was considered to have officially ended. But everyone on and off the boat was still eager to continue, and they started to jeer, "Play another one. President Zhang, it's not enough. Play another one. Yes, President Zhang, Prince Zhang, today is a rare good day. Play another one." This is also the first time Prince Zhang and Miss Jingshu played together on this mid-autumn night. This is a good time to leave a good story. Prince Zhang, do you want to play another song with Miss Jingshu? Not for others, just treat it as a celebration of today's achievement on mid-autumn night. How about it? Zhang Feng did not want to, after all, with the song, Loyalty to the Country, looking at the bright moon at this time, and then looking at Jingshu's cheeks, he really missed his home in the future. At this time in the past, he seemed to be playing games, mother's nagging, father's scolding. Thinking about it at this time, it made Zhang Feng so sad. He could not help it. At this time, Jingshu seemed to feel Zhang Feng's sadness. She could not help but tremble slightly. She gently pulled Zhang Feng's hand and shook it. Only then did Zhang Feng come back to his senses. Zhang Feng smiled slightly, looking at Jingshu, holding her shoulders affectionately and looking into her eyes. In an instant, this caused a burst of wolf howls. But at this time, the two of them could no longer hear it. At this time, the two of them only had each other in their eyes. The refracted light and flame in the lantern in front of the bronze mirror shone on Zhang Feng and Jingshu. Even the 4 bronze mirrors slowly shone on Zhang Feng at this time. The noise around them was also slowly suppressed under Li Shimon's hand gesture. It seemed that everyone was looking forward to Zhang Feng. After all, this kid always gave people a surprise. Sure enough, he lived up to everyone's expectations. Zhang Feng gently held Jingshu's chin, and then gently kissed Jingshu's forehead. "Thank you. If it weren't for you, I really don't know what Zhang Feng, would do next. It's all because you guys gave me a home." As he spoke, Zhang Feng ignored the silent surroundings, and then looked in the direction of Li Shimon and the others, and said deeply, "In this 1 year, I was confused, idle, and hesitant. I didn't know what Zhang Feng, would do in the future. Zhang Feng, don't have any other pursuits. I don't want to be rich, and I don't want to be a high-ranking official. I only want to be able to drink and chat with 3 or 5 friends, and play with them for a long time, and then hold hands with the person I love until old age. That's all." Silence. A deathly silence. All the women had already teared up when Zhang Feng kissed Jingshu, but after hearing Zhang Feng's words, they couldn't help but start sobbing. At this moment, all the men present also quietly walked to the side of the woman they admired, gently and secretly held her hand, and placed it on his heart. She could feel his heartbeat at this moment. Sigh, this stinking brat. Damn it, what is he doing? Lao Tzu's eyes are narrowed from the wind. The old scholar, Yu Shinan, and the others sighed and turned around. They couldn't bear to look at Zhang Feng. Just now, Zhang Feng's kiss made Ouyang Sun so angry that he picked up the wine cup and was about to smash it. This was simply offensive to public morals. But after Zhang Feng's words fell, the wine cup in his hand didn't fall. Instead, his entire body trembled as he looked at the bright moon. No one knew what he was thinking. Li Yuan tightly hugged Li Tai. Li Shimon tightly hugged Zhang Sun Wugo, who was crying. He looked at Zhang Feng, and then looked at Li Yuan. Then, he lightly walked to Li Yuan's side and said, "Father Emperor, today's moon is very round." Very round. But this stinking brat, wait a moment, the old man will definitely beat him. Ha ha ha, although Li Shimon and Li Yuan both laughed. This time, they really opened their hearts. Just like when they were children, they laughed heartily. At this time, Zhang Feng also woke up from deep nostalgia. He looked at Jingshu, who was crying in his arms, and then looked at the scene where the atmosphere was destroyed by him. He couldn't help but want to slap his own mouth a few times. Son of a bitch. What kind of nostalgia is Lao Tzu reminiscing about here? The atmosphere that he had worked so hard to create was gone. Zhang Feng quickly thought about something in his mind. Finally, he put the jade flute on the guzheng, and he couldn't help but have an idea. Everyone, I'm sorry. This kid is homesick. Who doesn't miss home at this time? But what I'm thinking about is those soldiers of the Tang dynasty who are stationed at the border to protect us at all times. If it weren't for them, how could we be here peacefully? So, this kid has prepared a song for everyone present. It's also for those who can't return home to reunite with their families today. It's also for those soldiers who are guarding us at the border. Zhang Feng paused, thought for a moment, and then said, the name of this song is Laughter in the Sea. Chapter 1204. With a laugh from the sea, the tide surges on both shores, floating and sinking with the waves to record the present day. With a laugh from the heavens, the tides of the world come one after another. Who wins and who loses, only God knows, in the sound of the jade flute. Zhang Feng let the musician use the softest tune to match the tune of the song, and then used the tune of his jade flute as the standard. With this song, sure enough, the atmosphere at the scene was stirred up again. The ones who were the most touched were Li Shimin, Ouyang Sun, and the others. This song could obviously be treated as a poem. Since when could this poem be sung? This kid really gave them one after another miracle after another. The people who were still immersed in homesickness, at this time, with the song, their blood was boiling again. What was this? This was simply a miracle. Those who were able to participate in this mid-autumn poetry meet were basically people who had a certain degree of knowledge in the literary world. But today, Zhang Feng opened a door that had never been opened before for them. Although there had been people who used poems before, but that was just to liven things up after drinking. Who would have thought that poems could be played like this? Now. At this moment, someone had already taken out a pen and paper, frantically copying the song Zhang Feng was singing at this time. What was this to them? This was Kuei Bao. This was something that could make them rich tomorrow. There were quite a few people who thought so. At this time, among the people on and off the boat, there were many who had already started to move. Those who did not have a pen and paper, at this time, actually used the candle oil and the lantern to light up some wood shavings, and then pressed the wood shavings on their clothes and began to write. Among them, the students of the 4 academies were the most active. Although Ouyang Kai and the others already knew about this, they did not say anything. What could they say? At this time, even people from the 5 families and 7 clans were secretly copying. What could they say? Yu Shinan and the others also looked at Zhang Feng with a smile. The song soon ended. When Zhang Feng's song ended, there was a sudden burst of noise and applause at the scene. Zhang Feng heaved a long sigh of relief when he heard the commotion. Finally, the matter was settled. Fortunately, the atmosphere that had been ruined by his homesickness was back. Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng. It was unknown which girl was shouting from below the boat. A moment later, the number of people shouting Zhang Feng's name increased. It was so much so that the people on the ship had already forgotten about the poetry gathering. The brothel keeper was the most important. She shouted excitedly with tears in her eyes. As he shouted, he pulled at the person beside him and said, "Do you know that when Prince Zhang went to Swallow Descent restaurant, he talked with me for 6 hours through the night. She even imparted her zither skills to the ladies of my Swallow Descent tower." Nonsense. Last time, Prince Zhang clearly went to my Chui Lin Yuan. Get lost. When did my dean go to your trashy Chui Lin Yuan? You better explain it to Lao Tzu. Otherwise, do you believe that Lao Tzu will set you on fire? At this moment, the burly Gao Can finally couldn't stand this group of chattering brothel keepers. He shouted angrily. Sure enough, it was effective. Li Shimin glanced at this group of brothel keepers indifferently and said to Xiao Gizi, "Noisy." Xiao Gizi heard this and hurriedly left with a bow. This group of silly women. How dare they criticize Prince Zhang here? I'm afraid that you're really tired of living. Now, don't blame me for being ruthless. The Ministry of Internal Affairs and the brothels of Chang and City were more or less connected. To be able to open a brothel in Chang and City, one would more or less have some connection with the royal family, the court, and the ministers of the palace. However, this group of insensible people actually dared to smear Zhang Feng's reputation at this time? This wasn't courting death, this was courting death. This was the time for Zhang Feng to build up his reputation. How dare you say that Zhang Feng went to your brothel? Although going to a brothel was the favorite thing of literati and could be considered a trend, no one would be able to stand it if you blatantly said that he went to a brothel. Moreover, today was the day for Zhang Feng to establish the position of great Confucian. If this wasn't smearing Zhang Feng's reputation, what was it? Usually, no matter what you say, the higher-ups will just turn a blind eye to it. But now? The people of Shandong happen to have no excuse, so why did you send it to them? Xiao Gizi also had some tricks up his sleeve. He didn't seem to make any noise, but the brothel keepers were already scared to the point that their faces turned ashen. They obediently slipped away. At this moment, after the group of flies left, Xiao Gizi didn't dare to be careless. Just now, he almost ruined a big thing. As the emperor's personal attendant, he should have thought of this and handled it well. However, because he was greedy to enjoy Zhang Feng's performance and singing, he delayed it for a while and almost caused a disaster. This infuriated little Gizi. Obviously, the episode here didn't affect Zhang Feng and the others upstairs. At this moment, when everyone's mood was slightly better, Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, everyone, please don't be impatient. Today, I have another announcement to make." Hearing this, the clamor was once again suppressed by Zhang Feng. Everyone looked at Zhang Feng eagerly. Only then did Zhang Feng say slowly, "The grand opening of my White Deer Academy is 3 days from now. At that time, I hope that all of you can head to Mount E to show your support." After that, Zhang Feng grabbed Jingshu and said in a voice that only the people on the boat could hear, "I'm leaving. You can continue." Chapter 1205. The hustle and bustle of the Mid-Autumn Festival continued. As soon as Zhang Feng left. Basically, those big shots had all left. The protagonist had left. Who would still want to watch those songs that made them sick? Who would still want to listen to those literatis' poems? Zhang Feng was too eye-catching. Who could be compared with him? But as soon as they left, Ouyang Kai and the others, who had planned to find Zhang Feng, couldn't leave at this time. Li Xiaogong only gave them some instructions, and they knew what they were going to do. Zhang Feng went straight home. Although Li Shimin and the others wanted to visit Zhang Feng's mansion, they knew that Zhang Feng was homesick at this time. Moreover, what Zhang Feng said before he sang was still fresh in their minds. They were sure that Zhang Feng would make a big decision tomorrow morning. However, when Zhang Feng returned home, he couldn't help but be stunned. He saw that the mansion was very lively. Large and small tables were placed in the front hall at the main entrance, then in the corridor, and then in the courtyard of the main hall. There were at least a dozen tables in total. When Zhang Feng and Jingshu appeared at the door, the group of veteran guards bowed excitedly, clasped their hands, and roared, "Hello, Patriarch." This roar scared Jingshu so much that she shivered. Zhang Feng stared at them. "Did you take the wrong medicine? I don't see you so happy on weekdays. What's wrong with you today?" The leader of the guards, Jia Daoran, who had a scar on his face, smiled and said, "Patriarch, today grandmother and Master Zhang took all the family members of the Zhang mansion to participate in the Lantern Festival. After learning that Master Zhang showed off his power, they all came here to wait for Master at home." Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. What the F***ck is he trying to do? Suddenly, Zhang Feng heard rustling sounds behind him. He thought it was Li Shimin and the others, but when he turned around, it was actually the old village chief, the old scholar, and Granny Wang. They were laughing as they walked into the mansion. Zhang Feng saw this. He knew that something bad was going to happen. The three of them said a few words to Zhang Feng. Then, they meaningfully turned to the group of old neighbors, Zhang Shan, and the others. When Zhang Feng was about to sit down and ask about the situation, Jia Daoran glanced at Jingshu and then mysteriously whispered in Zhang Feng's ear, "Patriarch, you should go back to your room to take a look. There's a surprise." "What surprise?" Zhang Feng asked rhetorically. However, Jia Daoran, this damned Jia Daoran, hurriedly went to a table in front of the mansion's entrance and started eating and drinking with a group of veterans. So mysterious. Could it be that he was here to force him to get married again? Zhang Feng couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Although it was not a big deal to get married at this time. However, these 5 surnames and 7 gazes did not disappear. He always felt that there was a pair of eyes staring at him from behind. And now Zhang Feng also knew what he was going to do. If he got married at this time, he would be too busy. Then, how could he have time to have a romantic relationship with his wives? Besides, Yu was still in Jiangnan. Jingshu, go and greet them first. I'll be back soon. Zhang Feng sent Jingshu away. Out of curiosity, Zhang Feng felt that it was better to go to the bedroom first. Zhang Feng bypassed the front yard, thinking about what to do in the future. Then, he walked to the bedroom door. The moment he put his hand on the door, Zhang Feng couldn't help looking in the direction of the north garden. At this time, it was also at this time. He and Yu but now, thinking about it, he couldn't help but feel sad again. The lights in the room were still on. Zhang Feng took a deep breath and slowly pushed the door open. As soon as he opened the door, Zhang Feng couldn't help but tremble when he saw a beautiful figure. "You, Zhang Feng's call made the person in the pink dress, who had her back to the door, tremble. Then, the earrings on her earlobes shook violently. Although she didn't say anything, the fragrance on her body and the waves of delicate fragrance that came from her body, who else could it be but Wuxia? Wasn't she in Jiangnan? When did she arrive in Chang'an? Why didn't anyone tell him? Damn old you. Did you, not leave the capital? A series of thoughts occupied Zhang Feng's mind. But in the end, it turned into a hug. You, brother. Zhang Feng, Wuxia's stiff body finally melted into Zhang Feng's arms. Finally, Wuxia cried. Her face and eyes, which were already mesmerizing to begin with, became even more mesmerizing after that night. Zhang Feng almost fell for them again. Zhang Feng finally came back to his senses. He took a deep breath and said, "Now that you're back, you're not leaving, are you? Are you planning to marry me?" Wuxia's words made Zhang Feng choke. That's right. What right did he have? Wuxia also saw Zhang Feng's dilemma. She hugged Zhang Feng and breathed in his scent. Then, she said, "I missed you so much that I came back to see you. Also, I received your letter. This time, I came back to Chang'an with 2 pieces of news. One is good news, and the other is bad news. Which one do you want to hear?" In the end, Wuxia held Zhang Feng's face and couldn't help but kiss Zhang Feng. She said, "Brother Feng, what are your plans for the 5 families and 7 clans?" Chapter 1206. In fact, Zhang Feng did not know what he wanted to do in the future. He did not know how to deal with the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. The 5 surnames and 7 hopes had existed for hundreds of years. This complicated network of relationships was not something a small fry like Zhang Feng could easily shake. But at this moment, the other party was about to bully him. If Zhang Feng did not react at all, would they really think of him as a pushover? This iron ore was related to Zhang Feng's future research. In particular, there were all kinds of mineral resources. If they did not embezzle, he might not stoop to their level. But you guys are stuck on the path of scientific research that I want to do. This is your fault, isn't it? In the future, the research and development of high-precision instruments, as well as the next step that Zhang Feng urgently needed to improve the wheat varieties, as well as the fertilizer for the grain, and so on, all needed these things. And they also needed a container. Many of these things existed in these mines. Especially the containers, utensils and so on. This was the best way for Zhang Feng to accumulate reputation. the people of the Tang dynasty were poor to begin with. Moreover, the medical standards and hygiene standards were terrible. In particular, there were many people who did not bathe for 3 years. This made Zhang Feng urgently want to change all of this. If nothing else, at the very least, you would not be able to smell that strange smell when you walked on the street. However, these things were easy to say, but it took time to do. After all, the bad habits left behind by thousands of years could not be changed by one person alone. At the very least, you had to have a certain reputation. Although it was not the kind that could be enforced with words, at least people would believe you. That was enough. This was the era when the slavery system in Wuxia was the most prosperous. It was also the era when Wuxia was about to rise. These things had to be done by someone. Although Zhang Feng was very lazy and did not want to do it, for his future and to let him enjoy life in the future, Zhang Feng still felt that he had to do something. Zhang Feng explained his thoughts to Wuxia Xianxia in detail. Wuxia Xianxia leaned into Zhang Feng's embrace, her eyes filled with tears. Big brother Feng, how did you think of so many things? Wuxia Xianxia hugged Zhang Feng and asked emotionally. Zhang Feng kissed Wuxia Xianxia's smooth forehead and said, "Isn't today the Mid-Autumn Festival? I'm a little homesick. When I'm homesick, I suddenly feel that the things I did before were all very selfish. Although I am separated from my previous home by a time and space, I have all of you now. Not for anything else, but for all of you, I have to change. In the past, I just felt that it was easy to be a little rich. Later on, I slowly felt that the neighbors around me were illiterate. I felt that it was a little unbearable to look at. That was why Laoli set up Cheng and University. Later on, I squatted in front of the small gate and stared blankly for 4 hours. Then, I suddenly realized that there were very few literate people in the Tang dynasty. Moreover, it was simply an extravagant hope for ordinary people to want to go to school. On top of that, the social hierarchy makes everyone have different levels. To me, this is so unfair. That's why I've decided to do something big. At the very least, when my son goes out in the future, he won't meet any idiots. Moreover, in the medical field of this era, many things are simply difficult and complicated in the eyes of the people. However, to me, these are actually very easy to deal with, but, so, that's why you said those words on the flower boat just now? Wuxia Xianxia looked at Zhang Feng with a face full of admiration. She couldn't help but peck Zhang Feng lightly on the lips twice. Zhang Feng almost couldn't help but want to take her on the spot. Wuxia Xianxia was also a seductress. At the most critical moment, she was kicked off the bed by Zhang Feng. At this moment, the two of them were leaning against the bed, panting. Zhang Feng was grimacing in pain. Yes, it was because I thought of you, Yuyao, Jingshu, old scholar Laoli, and the others that I was suddenly enlightened. At that time, I remembered that I wanted to protect them. Protecting them didn't require profound knowledge or wealth, but prestige and an official position. At the very least, an official position that could deceive them. Only in this way can they not be harmed at all. Under this premise, I have to spread what I know as much as possible. Only in this way can I continue to accumulate prestige and fame so that the descendants of the Zhang family will never die out because of my departure. There was something else that Zhang Feng didn't say. That was, he wanted to change this era. He wanted to bring this Iron Age into the Steam Age, and even lead the Tang dynasty into the Electric Age in his lifetime. Although Zhang Feng didn't care about the change of dynasties, he cared about the people in the present. Laoli and the others around him were his brothers, his relatives in the Tang dynasty. They were the people he had to protect. This was his bottom line. No one could touch them. The two of them snuggled together for a long time. Zhang Feng also thought of many things. Finally, he gently stroked Wuxia Xianxia's cheek and said, "Let's go. Come with me to meet them." Chapter 1207. Wuxia Xianxia wanted to refuse. But she also knew that this was a rare opportunity. Basically, except for the emperor and the others, everyone Zhang Feng knew and was familiar with had come. Zhang Feng wanted to bring her to meet his family. Although she didn't want to, she still went along with Zhang Feng and blushed. The banquet in the front hall hadn't started yet. Everyone was talking about their family affairs, but the most talked about was Zhang Feng's incident on the flower boat today. Gradually, Yu Shinan and the others arrived. Qing Chimo, Yuqi Baolin, and the others all came with congratulatory gifts. Li Shimin also came. They didn't want to come at first, but when they learned that Yuqi Yu was also here, they suddenly felt that there would be a big melon to eat tonight. Li Shimin even brought a cart of muskmelons from Longyu Daoyun that he had kept for a long time. When Zhang Feng and Yuqi Yu walked into the front hall, the people in the front hall instantly booed. Boo! This is unreasonable. Laozi's face can be considered quite handsome, but why are all the good women in this slut's arms? This was Zhang Xuan's lamenting. However, Zhang Sun was then hit on the head. That's my aunt. Why? Do you have a problem with her? Yuqi Baolin glared at Zhang Sun and clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. Zhang Sun was so scared that he waved his hands repeatedly. Amidst the laughter of the crowd, Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu came out to greet them. They knew about Yuqi Yu. They were all women, so who didn't know about this relationship? Although they were also helpless, they also knew how powerful Yuqi Yu was. What could Zhang Feng say? He could only cup his fists and greet everyone. This time, Li Shimin still had a conscience and sent Zhang Feng 100 jugs of the newly brewed white wine. It was enough for Zhang Feng to drink to his heart's content tonight. After greeting everyone in the front hall, Zhang Feng brought the 3 women into the living room. There were 3 tables in the living room. One table was occupied by Old He, Zhang Shan, and the others from Tong Huifang. The other table was occupied by the great scholar, Li Shimin, and the others. At the other table was Li Qingxian, Ma Zhou, and the others. As soon as he entered the door, Zhang Feng saw the melon on the table and couldn't help but be stunned. This is a watermelon? Since when did the Tang dynasty have watermelons? When Li Shimin saw Zhang Feng staring at the watermelon, he stroked his beard and smiled. What do you think? It seems like this isn't the first time you've seen this thing. Lao Li, where did you get this thing? Zhang Feng asked hurriedly. While speaking, Zhang Feng didn't stand on ceremony and pulled the 3 women to sit next to Li Shimin and the 4 great scholars. When Li Shimin heard this, he laughed and said, "Did you forget that I have a property in Longyu Road? Although this melon belongs to the imperial family, if I want to get some, it's still possible. After all, there are a lot of them planted in that medicinal field." You have it in Longyu Road? Zhang Feng was a little confused, but after thinking about it carefully, it seemed that this thing did exist in the Tang dynasty. It seemed to have been introduced to the Tang dynasty from Persia. This was not surprising. Everyone was a regular guest, so there was no need to be polite. They drank and chatted with Zhang Feng. After a full hour, the banquet was over. The guests in the courtyard seemed to know that Zhang Feng and others had something important to do, so they left early. At this time, there were only 3 tables in the living room left in the Zhang mansion. Feng Zi, no, I should call you He Xian now. The old scholar asked with a smile, do you know why the old man gave you this nameplate? Zhang Feng shook his head. Everyone laughed but didn't say anything. Qing Chimo asked naively, old scholar, why did you give me such a bad name? It's not as domineering as Jiu Xian. If that doesn't work, you can also call me drunkard. Or immortal poet is also fine. You better shut up. Zhang Feng's face flushed red. Immortal poet? How could a plagiarist dare to call him immortal poet? The old scholar laughed and stood up. He patted Zhang Feng on the shoulder and said, as you can see, Miss Zhang Yuyao, Jing Shu, and Yu Yu, are all rare beauties. In addition, they can share some trivial things for Feng Zi in all aspects. They can also help him relax when he is upset. What is this? This is a family. It's something that no one can replace. The old scholar looked up at the gradually disappearing moon in the sky and said, the old man wants them to sing together. Now, everyone finally understood the old scholar's meaning. The old elementary scholar was blatantly protecting his calf. Li Shimin couldn't help but sigh slightly. How could he not know the old scholar's meaning? Zhang Feng was a man with a family. You guys seem to be afraid of tricking Zhang Feng. Were you still brothers? But, to be honest, Li Shimin really felt a little guilty. Zhang Feng had helped him more than a little, but he didn't even tell Zhang Feng his true identity. He had been thinking, what if Zhang Feng knew his identity, what would happen? Would Zhang Feng still be brothers? After all, he had been a loner for a long time. If it wasn't for the fact that he accidentally walked into the small tavern, if it wasn't for Zhang Feng's guidance, he might still be living in deep pressure, self-blame, the curses of the court, and all kinds of complicated trivial things. Thinking of this, Li Shimin laughed heartily and said, Old Xianxia is indeed worthy of being an old pedant, an old senior. You hit the nail on the head. Indeed, Feng Zi, it's time for you to have a family. Why do you still plan to get married 3 years later? Zhang Feng looked at the 3 girls, then looked at the crowd and nodded. My situation, you should all be clear. Although I feel a little sorry for them, but what I want to do now is to have a better reunion in the future. If I don't get rid of the 5 families and 7 clans, I'm afraid that the people I care about will be implicated. I don't want them to be implicated or affected. You know my temper. They, as well as all of you here, are the people closest to me. That's why I don't want you to be affected because of this matter. That's why I'll make a statement in front of everyone today. If I don't get rid of the 5 families and 7 clans, I, Zhang Feng, will not marry. Chapter 1208. Li Shimin was surprised. Was Zhang Feng determined to go against the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans? But after thinking about it, Li Shimin felt relieved. At this time, they had already stood on the opposite side of the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans. It was already a situation where they would fight to the death. If they showed weakness at this time, everything they had done before would be nonsense. Most importantly, if the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans were forced into a corner, even if the retired emperor gave Zhang Feng the blood jade of Feng Lang Ju Su, it would not work. These people had extensive connections in both the underworld and the legal world. Once, Li Shimin didn't dare to think about it. At this time, everyone in the living room was strangely quiet. Even the old Xiaotsai and Zhang Shan didn't say anything. Even they didn't dare to touch the terror of the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans. If this thing was not solved, it would be really big trouble. Motherf *****. Feng Zi, if you trust me, then give me the group of veterans in your estate and the academy. I'll annihilate your entire family in less than a month. Right at this moment, Gao Kan suddenly stood up and spoke with a baleful aura all over his body. Everyone's expression changed when they heard this. Although they were in the depths of the mansion, it was inevitable that some problems would occur. Gao Kan, sit down for this old man. Are you trying to show off your abilities? Yu Shernan's expression turned cold as he berated Gao Kan's. Gao Kan stood there stubbornly, feeling aggrieved. Zhang Feng glanced at him and couldn't help but have an idea. Although Gao Kan's words were a little reckless, it was also a way. If I send a small group of special forces to stir up trouble behind these people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans, wouldn't it be? Thinking of this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but change his expression. Instead, he really began to think about it. No wonder Gao Kan would become the 3rd war general of the Tang dynasty in the future. This was really not a joke. But, he still needed to practice. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng suddenly laughed. Laughing heartily, he patted Gao Kan's shoulder and said, sit down. When the academy stabilizes, I will give you a good job. How about it? Li Shimin also seemed to have expected something and smiled in relief. However, Yu Shernan and the old scholar both said in unison, Feng Zi, don't be rash. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, don't worry, I know what to do. By the way, since everyone is here tonight, shall we talk about the opening of the academy? When it came to serious matters, Yu Shernan and the others finally put down the matter in front of them. Although they were still a little worried, seeing that Zhang Feng had already changed the topic, it meant that this kid had already made up his mind. They couldn't help but sigh. However, the opening of the academy was also a matter of great importance. Yu Shinan and the others had been preparing for this for at least half a month. At this moment, he could only put this matter aside. At the very least, he prayed that Zhang Feng would not act recklessly. If the 5 surnames and 7 hopes were really that easy to deal with, then it wouldn't have existed for hundreds of years. More than 2 hours later, the moon finally fell on the distant Qinling mountain. The misty fog also slowly covered the stars in the sky. At this time, Chang and city seemed to be covered with a thick layer of mysterious veil. The stars swaying in the fog like stars made Chang and city even more mysterious. At this time, in Zhang Mansion, because it was late at night, everyone returned to their own mansions. This was also the time when there was no curfew once a year. Otherwise, everyone would want to stay tonight and secretly see if Zhang Feng would have anything to do with the 3 girls. However, all of them fled in all directions under the broom in Zhang Feng's hand. At this time, in Zhang Feng's bedroom, although Yu had experienced it once, her heart beat faster when she looked at Zhang Feng, who was close at hand. Well, I'll go and see if Sister Jingshu and the others are asleep. In the end, Yu was defeated by Zhang Feng's heavy breathing. How could Zhang Feng allow such a thing to happen? He grabbed Yu and said, "Don't worry. They know. They should be asleep now." After a night of torment, it was not until late in the morning that Zhang Feng got out of bed, exhausted. When he touched the bed, Yu was already gone. Zhang Feng was a little disappointed. When would she not disappear so mysteriously? Zhang Feng sighed heavily. He knew that Yu had left. This was destined. Sure enough, when Zhang Feng lit a cigarette, he found a piece of paper under the teapot. He slowly unfolded the paper. Who else could it be but Yu's beautiful handwriting? "Brother Feng, I'm leaving. Although I can't bear to leave Sister Jingshu and Sister Yuyao, I also know that this is not the time for us to be reunited. Do you remember what happened in Jiangnan last time? This time, I came to Chang and with 50,000 stony iron ore. This is the most I can get. But don't worry, I've already discussed it with the Jiangnan Lu family. When I go back this time, we'll talk about the iron ore business. Don't miss me." Zhang Feng sighed heavily. When Zhang Feng walked out of the room, he saw Yu Qigong sitting in the yard with a birdcage in his hand. He was happily playing with it. When he saw Zhang Feng come out, Yu Qigong smiled playfully and said, "How was last night?" "Hee, you're so early. Don't tell me you've been eavesdropping since last night?" Zhang Feng was a little suspicious. Yu Qigong rolled his eyes. He said, "You spent a lot of effort to persuade the Lu family. But as far as I know, the Lu family wants you, to be the 3rd wife of their 2nd son. You know what to do, don't you?" When Zhang Feng heard that, his expression changed instantly. Damn it, where did the Lu family come from? Did they eat a leopard's gall? How dare they touch Zhang Feng's woman? Gao Can, get the hell out of here for Lao Tzu. Go. When Yu Qigong saw that Zhang Feng was really anxious, he said flatly, "He's a branch of the Fanyang Lu family. Think about it." Chapter 1209. The Fanyang Lu family? Why the F***ck did the Fanyang Lu family get involved? Zhang Feng was a little confused. But this D***mn guy dared to snatch his woman? If he wasn't tired of living, then what was? F***ck him. Do you really think I, Zhang Feng, am a sick cat if I don't show my power? Yu Qigong sighed when he saw this. I knew you would be like this. Don't worry, I've already informed them. Although you, doesn't know, I've already sent a letter to you's father. I also know that Lao Li has already arranged people in Jiangnan. This guy from the Lu family has long been one of you's suitors. This time, is in a hurry to get the iron for you in Jiangnan, and this Lu family happens to have iron mines. That's why this happened. But don't worry, the Lu family won't dare to go against us. When Zhang Feng heard this, he quickly asked, "This is the Lu family of the 5 surnames and 7 clans. Are you sure they won't dare to do anything to you? Don't you have that hairpin? I've already sent a message to the Lu family, so I'll leave it to you." When Zhang Feng heard this, he heaved a deep sigh of relief. But at the same time, this was the first time he faced these people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans. As expected, overflowing power was the only way to go about it. "Old you, let's go back to the academy." Yu Qigong thought that Zhang Feng was going to do something, but when he heard Zhang Feng say that, he couldn't help but be stunned. "Why are we going back to the academy? Aren't we going to look for iron mines?" Zhang Feng smiled coldly. "Do you really think the Wang clan's people will just stand there and watch us look for iron mines? Actually, it's true that there are iron mines on Mount Longsho, but do you know why I built the academy on Mount Shao? Who would know what you're thinking? Why did you build the academy in this godforsaken place?" Yu Qigong cursed silently. But at this moment, Zhang Feng said with a sly smile, "Because there are a few iron mines in the depths of Mount Shao." What did you say?" After a brief moment of shock, Yu Qigong hurriedly threw down the birdcage and dragged Zhang Feng into the study. As soon as he entered, Yu Qigong hurriedly asked, "Tell me in detail, is there really a mine in Pyrolite Mountain? What kind of ores were they? How did you know? Logically speaking, you've never been to this godforsaken place." Of course, Zhang Feng had never been to Shao Mountain before the establishment of the academy. However, Zhang Feng knew better than anyone what would happen in Shao Mountain thousands of years later. After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng said, "Do you still remember those limestone kilns I built on Pyrolite Mountain? It's the mine that makes cement." Yu Qigong nodded. Zhang Feng continued, "In that place, where there is limestone, there will definitely be coal mines. And where there are coal mines, there will definitely be iron mines and other mineral resources. And oil." However, Zhang Feng did not mention this. After all, although there was indeed oil in Bailu Plains after exploration in the future, but, with the current technology, it was extremely difficult to extract it. Moreover, the age of steam had not even been reached. It would be useless to create such a thing. That was why Zhang Feng did not mention the oil. However, Yu Qigong could not help but feel a little angry. "Since you already know that there are iron mines here, why did you waste so much effort to find people to look for iron mines? Are you toying with us?" When Zhang Feng heard that, he hurriedly waved his hand and said, "No, no, no. How is this playing with us? This is called diverting attention. Think about it, there's also the saying of creating a diversion. Why can't I use it here?" Yu Qigong was stunned when he heard that. That was right. Zhang Feng was right. However, there was also a big problem. Although Zhang Feng was right, but Yu Qigong heaved a deep sigh of relief. Last night in the palace, the emperor had already ordered a large number of soldiers to Mount Longsho to find the iron mines before the Wang clan. He had even planned that once the Wang clan found the iron mines, he would not allow them to bring the news back even if he had to kill every single member of the Wang clan on Mount Longsho. But now? Yu Qigong's face was solemn as he tried to light a cigarette with trembling hands. However, his hands were shaking so badly that he could not light it up after a few tries. In the end, he gave up and snatched the cigarette from Zhang Feng's hand. After taking a few deep breaths, he asked, "Then what do you plan to do?" "Take the initiative to attack." Zhang Feng clenched his fists. "The people from the 5 families and 7 clans are bullying us. If we don't do anything, we will really be cowards. If we can get the iron mines on Mount Longsho, there will only be benefits for us. Even if we can't get it, we still have a final choice, right? We can also probe the Wang clan's background. That's the most important thing. Once we have the initiative, have you ever thought of the saying that a 1,000-mile dam can be destroyed by an ant's nest?" Yu Qigong scratched his head and scratched his curly beard, giving Zhang Feng goosebumps. After a while, Yu Qigong said, "Never heard of it." Chapter 12:10. After hearing Zhang Feng's plan, Yuqi Gong hurriedly returned to the palace. Zhang Feng also went up the mountain after giving some instructions on the matters in the mansion. Niu Jinda originally wanted to go to the Zhang mansion last night. But after thinking about it, he decided not to go. It was not that he did not want to go, but he wanted to accompany his son. As for Zhang Feng's side, he believed that Zhang Feng would not blame him. All these years, he had been too harsh on Niu Jinhu. And all these years, he had not spent much time at home, nor did he have much time to accompany his wife and children. At this time, because of Niu Jinhu's broken leg, the emperor had ordered him to rest at home for 3 months. Last night, to be honest, was the first time in recent years that he spent the Mid-Autumn Festival at home with his wife and children. At this time, in the report of his subordinates, Niu Jinda looked at Niu Jinhu lying on the recliner sent by Zhang Feng. He opened his mouth to say something, but in the end, he did not say anything. Seeing this, Niu Jinhu asked, "Father, are you going to look for ore?" Niu Jinda nodded. "Xiao Feng is our Niu family's savior. Our Niu family has never had such an ungrateful person in their 8 generations." At this time, a white-haired old man with a walking stick walked into the living room with the help of a group of servants. Seeing this, Niu Jinda hurriedly got up and said, "Second uncle, why are you here?" The old man glared at Niu Jinda and said, "You are that boy's brother. Look at him now, he is so busy because of the iron. What about you? Still at home?" "That's not it. I'm just thinking about it." Niu Jinda was a little flustered. "I'm also thinking about whether I should tell you." The old man held up his walking stick and said, "Do you still need to tell me? If you have the time, you should have gone up the mountain with those idle people at home, lest old man goes out and gets exposed." All right, I'll go now. When Niu Jinda heard this, he immediately rushed out of the living room. As he ran, he shouted, "Official, immediately order everyone in the Fu who can walk to follow Lao Tzu to Mount Nyosho." "Master, this is..." The housekeeper panicked. He looked at his lame leg and asked bitterly, "Master, then I..." Niu Jinda glared at Guanjiadu. "What about you? Go up the mountain with Lao Tzu. Leave the matters of the mansion to Jianghu and old master for the time being." "Fine." Now, he couldn't run even if he wanted to. Originally, everyone in the Niu residence already knew that this matter couldn't be avoided. However, they didn't see old Master Niu make any moves these few days. They thought that the thousands of personal guards that old Master Niu sent out would be enough. They thought that this group of old, weak, and disabled people with missing arms and legs wouldn't go out. But now, it seemed that they still couldn't avoid it. Although they yearned for Zhang Feng's miraculous medical skills, and they admired Zhang Feng for fixing young master's leg, this matter of going up the mountain to search for ores, if it were any other time, there would be no need to mention it. But now, even walking on a daily basis was difficult for them. This was the root of the illness that they had gotten when they were in the army. Now, even if they wanted to, but, at this moment, Niu Jinda gave an order. There were more than 30 people in the mansion. All of them stood neatly in front of Niu Jinda. Niu Jinda didn't say anything. He waved his hand and said, "I'll give you 1 hour to prepare 3 days' worth of rations and horse equipment. This time, we swear that we won't return until we find the iron mine." "Understood." Hearing this, Niu Jinda waved his hand and said, "Let's go." Early this morning, Niu Jinda just found out that Yuqi Gong, and even Wei Zheng had sent people out to search for iron ores. The emperor had even arranged for a large number of soldiers to go to Longzhou Mountain last night. It would be inappropriate if he didn't go now. But if he left, he wouldn't feel safe leaving the tiger behind. Under the old master's reprimand, Niu Jinda made up his mind to go look for ores. If he couldn't find an iron mine before Yuqi Gong and the other old men after wandering around the mountains for a few years, he wouldn't be able to do it. If that was the case, then he would have lived in vain. After all, Zhang Feng had saved his life. Niu Jinda's departure from Chang'an was very big. At the very least, many people saw the galloping horses. Everyone couldn't help but be stunned when they saw this scene. Was a war about to break out? But this was just everyone's guess. Some people who knew Niu Jinda and the others saw this and hurriedly reported everything about Niu Jinda's departure from Chang'an. Whether it was the imperial palace, the Grand Duke's mansions, or the properties of Guanlong and the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs in Chang'an, everyone knew something. That was, the atmosphere of this matter seemed to be oppressive. Zhang Feng was really angry. The news of the iron mine search couldn't be suppressed and spread like wildfire in Chang'an city. Niu Pihuang looked at the comments of the people on the street and then looked at the people shuttling back and forth on the street. He shook his head and sighed. The sky is going to change. It's time for us to return to Shao Mountain. Chapter 12:11. Do you know? Not a single piece of iron can be found in Chang'an now. This was the most popular topic in Chang'an during this period of time. It was also the thing that the people were most interested in talking about. Autumn planting, for the people who had just experienced this locust plague, was undoubtedly a life-saving autumn planting. If they could survive this winter, they would have a good harvest in the coming year. But at this time, the people heard something that made them extremely angry. That was, the people of Taiyuan Wang clan actually broke their iron mine. Farming tools were something that everyone needed to survive. Without farming tools, how could they talk about autumn planting? Dig with their hands? But at this time, how could the commoners not be angry? That damned bastard actually ruined the iron that the commoners needed. Now, coupled with the fact that President Zhang Zhangfeng actually hurried to find iron mines on the second day of the Mid-Autumn Festival to think of a solution for them, the people finally could not sit still. At this time, at the entrance of the Wang clan blacksmith shop in Chang'an's West Market, a large group of people holding pickaxes angrily blocked the door and quarreled with a thin middle-aged man with a pair of triangular eyes. The middle-aged man was already sweating profusely at this time, and his eyes even glanced at the pickaxe held high above his head from time to time. Everyone, you are on a blind date. Something happened in my Wang family's mine. I just got the news from my family that the matter in the mine will be settled in half a month's time. At that time, we will have iron. Nonsense. Half a month, who can wait for you for half a month? The banker will wait for you for half a month? The weather and so on. If we wait for you for half a month, the banker in the field will be gone. Yes, today, either you move aside and let us in to have a look. If there is really nothing, we won't say anything. But if you don't move aside, it means that you are up to something and don't want us to live a good life. At this time, a dark man in the crowd waved the kitchen knife in his hand and was about to rush in. Instantly, the man was scared and his hair stood up. Hey, what are you doing? If you dare to rush in, do you believe that I will immediately report to the authorities? Guards, guard the door. The middle-aged man was panicking. But at this moment, an old man in the crowd slowly looked through the gaps of the crowd and saw the piles of iron on the floor. He couldn't help but get angry. Motherf asterisk cur, these brats don't want us to live anymore. Look, their shop is full of iron, and they dare to lie through their teeth and say that there is no iron? What? Hearing that, everyone was shocked. The common people. They were the easiest to fool. He was the most honest. But once they found out that they had been cheated, and it was a life-threatening kind, then even if you were the heavenly King Lao Tzu, they would still dare to drag you down. At this moment, sure enough, no one was willing to believe the middle-aged man's words. The furious commoners broke through the middle-aged man and the blacksmiths in the shop. The burly man from before took the opportunity to kick down the shop's door. Instantly. In that room, there were piles of ironware, furniture, and piles of raw iron. Instantly, the people who were watching the show saw a scene that they couldn't believe and were incomparably angry. Motherf asterisk cur, is this what you said? No iron? Then why don't you F asterisk king tell me what these things are? Are you the one who made this mess? Everyone's lungs were about to explode. At this time, the middle-aged man still stiffened his neck and struggled to say, These are all ordered by the palace. You can't mess around. These are all the emperor's things. Lao Tzu, *ck off. If they were the emperors, would the emperor send people to look for iron? Would the common people suffer? The burly man couldn't bear it anymore. He punched the middle-aged man in the nose. In an instant, the burly man screamed like a pig being slaughtered. Murder. Does anyone care about it? Murder. Guards. There was a burst of shrill screams, as if the burly man had done something to him. The noise here had already attracted the attention of the patrolling guards. At this time, the guards of the Chang and local government rushed up. What's going on? What's going on? Get out of the way. Put the knife down. The guards were all farmers and didn't want to interfere. But when they rushed into the crowd to take a look, they couldn't help but be shocked. The kitchen knife in the brawny man's hand was actually raised to the man's neck, and the middle-aged man's nose was already full of blood. When he wiped it, his face was covered in blood. As soon as he saw the guards, the man couldn't help but scream again, "Sir, murder! Help! Shut up!" The guards were not easy to fool, especially those who worked in Chang and city. They were even more sophisticated. At this time, the burly man still ignored the guards and scolded, Yazi, you want Lao Tzu to let go of you? Go in and let Lao Tzu see the things in the shop, then you come back and talk to Lao Tzu. Motherf *Ker, don't you know that your father almost smashed the pot at home for this piece of scrap iron? Take a look at what's in the shop. Among the guards, a young man who was slightly younger heard this and immediately leaned forward. Uncle Zheng, please give me some face, I'll give your father some face. Go in and take a look. Are you coming or not? If you don't go in, Lao Tzu will chase you in with a butcher's knife. Seeing this, the guard hurriedly begged for mercy. Then, he whispered a few words into the ears of the angry bailiffs. Then, he led the bailiffs to knock down the workers who were not allowed to enter the door. As soon as they entered the shop, the guards were dumbfounded. In the past few days, the news of their lack of iron had been spread all over the city. But in their eyes, what was it? Motherf *Ker, there was a room full of iron. Motherf *Ker, what was this? The higher-ups had asked several times, but didn't these guys say that they had no iron? What was this? What was this? This was the crime of deceiving the emperor. This was a great function. Yazi and the others couldn't help but pull out the knives at their waists. They turned pale with fright and said, Guards! Tie them up for me. Quick, go and inform Lord Nyo.